Chapter 2063. The annihilation of the storm happened all of a sudden. The tricolored sun suddenly retracted the violent energy blast it was releasing. After squirming for a while, it quickly shrank and collapsed inwards. The entire sun was twisted into a petal shape, and light and heat rapidly dropped to normal levels in just half a minute. Seeing this, frost slightly weakened the ice storm hovering in the air. Everyone stared at the sun, not daring to relax before the results were out. After all, that was rule, order, and energy form. Previously, there was an observer who exerted extreme power to blast against the chaos concept body, and then there was a small phoenix sun that almost melted through the eternally frozen earth. Moreover, the latter's obvious form had just emerged, and the exploration of this form of power had just begun. When she reached the level of the former, she would be able to truly release that power, although it was already very frightening. After waiting for a little anxiously for 5 minutes, the tricolored sun finally disappeared completely. The ice storm that swept across the sky had lost its target and drifted away with the wind. They looked up and were startled. Little Phoenix, who was wearing a red and black dress, was slowly floating down from the sky. Her body was constantly emitting tricolored flowing light, which was still like a brilliant sun. The energy in her body was in a state of extreme eruption. That oppressive feeling that could shake the void was indeed the rule, order, and energy form. They estimated that if she hung in the void, those who were not high-level Yuanshi would have to retreat. Well, she was still not as good as a certain observer. She had to be more familiar with the newly mastered form of energy, which was enough for her to keep busy for a while. As for the observer, as expected, she was carried down in Lin Sanju's arms. This person was very interesting. She went to rescue someone else, and then she was lying down. What the hell was this? When the blue phoenix landed on the ground, the little angel also floated out of her soul. She saw to everyone and knew what they wanted to ask, so she spoke first. He is fine. He just spent a lot of energy and soul power to wake up the blue phoenix in the last stage and fainted. Hearing this unsurprising answer, Huey's face was indifferent. It's also a traditional skill. I don't find it strange at all. But looking at your expression, it seems that there's something else. The little angel shrugged and sighed with mixed feelings. The tiredness that has been accumulating for a long time backfired on him just now. He almost couldn't complete the last step of awakening in time and passed out from exhaustion. Everyone was silent for a while, and there was a complicated feeling in their hearts. Finally, it had come to this point. They had guessed that this kind of situation would happen a long time ago, but there had never been anything that required him to deal with urgently, so the hidden danger in this aspect had not been exposed. They had never thought that the issue of dealing with the little phoenix would be exposed. TSK. Now that things have come to this guy, forget it. He probably won't take it seriously. Feng Qingwang hugged the person in her arms tightly. Mei Mao was a bit helpless and self-blaming. She had done everything she could for this. She had spent thousands of years to prepare, but she still couldn't withstand the situation during the transformation. The little angel looked at her and said, "Don't worry." Little angel saw that she was a little down and patted her head. "All right, don't put on such an expression. It's not all your fault. You've done well enough. It's better than what little Star and I expected. He didn't make it to the end because he often tortured himself. He's fine. He'll be fine after a few days of rest. Actually, it's not a bad outcome. Let him know that he's already endured to the point where he can't bear it. Next time, I'll have a reason to nag him. He won't know that he's riddled with holes until something happens." We thought for a moment and said, "Although I think that even if Feng knows that he is in all kinds of situations, he will still come up with a lot of reasons to show that he can still bear it and continue to endure." But even if he was lying down, he was not really resting or relaxing. It was just an emergency treatment. Once he recovered to a state where he could move, he would definitely get up without a second of delay. Even if they knew that he was enduring, they could not find a reason to attack him. Efficiency reduction, or poor condition, would not appear under normal circumstances. After all, he was trying his best to suppress it, and he would not show it unless something happened. Things like today would not happen so often either. Therefore, they could not find a reason to attack him. Even if they did, he would not care. If he really cared, when he was tormenting the source laws back then, phew, they did not know who could change that guy and save him some trouble. Perhaps no one could make him change. His unique and impregnable worldview was not something that could change him. That was why they could not find a reason to attack him. Even if they attacked him, he would not care. If he really cared, when he was tormenting the source laws back then, phew, they did not know who could change that guy and save him some trouble. Perhaps no one could change him. His unique and impregnable worldview was not something that could change him. Little Angel patted Blue Phoenix's head and asked her to send Little Star into the conch house to rest. This matter could be considered to have come to an end without any abnormal or fatal incidents. Apart from a certain someone who almost went out of control and had to lie in bed for 3 to 5 days, everything was still under control. This was something worth celebrating. When Little Phoenix came back, we saw that she was still in the law, order, energy form. He felt that her aura was comparable to that of a high-level premier. He could not help but shout, "Bless the birth of the second crazy guy in the Void Battlefront." Feng Qing Huang staggered when she heard this. She could not help but smile bitterly at everyone who looked at her. Because she did not know what to say, she could only pull her hair and smile bitterly. So he went forward to look at Blue Phoenix. She circled around her, held her hand, and looked at it. Then, she touched the flowing light on her body. She could not help but say, "Law, order, energy form. No matter how many times I see it, I still feel that it is very powerful." Speaking of which, this kind of unreasonable way to increase one's combat power. Should I try it too? Everyone turned pale with fright. Thousands of words were prepared in an instant. When they were about to spit it out, Feng Qing Wang hurriedly grabbed her hands and took the right to speak. She looked at Siyu with a gentle face. "You think twice." Everyone. All right, this was someone who had experienced it once and knew that this path would only lead to more deaths. Thus, he turned around and advised the others. It was really only after experiencing it personally that one would know what it meant to lead to more deaths. I'm just kidding. Don't be so nervous." Siyu smiled and shook her head. She looked at Blue Phoenix, who was still scared. She could not help but ask, "So, what did you experience in there?" Feng Qing Huang thought for a while. She felt that if she described it in too much detail, she might not be able to feel it deeply. Also, if she described it in too much detail, she felt that she would have hallucinations. So, she thought about Little Star's tone and words and said softly, "It was like dying once every minute." Everyone was speechless. This conclusion gave them goosebumps. A chill spread from the bottom of their feet to their backs. In the end, their brains were numb and they were frozen. Seeing that everyone's face was pale and scared to death, Feng Qing Huang smiled bitterly. She could not tell the details of what she went through. It was just something like that. If it was not for Little Star's help and her awakening, she was not confident that she could grasp the form of this power. Perhaps the best result would be to forcefully interrupt it. Then, everything she went through would be in vain. Fortunately, she managed to endure it in the end. Now that she had this power in her hands, she felt that everything was worth it. Why did she suddenly have the thought of going back and slapping herself to calm down? An illusion? It must be an illusion. It was worth it. It was just that she had troubled little Xing Xing, so she felt a little apologetic. She originally thought that she would be able to completely handle it by herself. After confirming that the 2 crazy eggs, one big and one small, were fine, everyone strolled away and continued to study. Recently, they had been stimulated too much. First, there was the little angel, who quietly broke through to the higher rank, and then there was the little phoenix who resolutely turned into a crazy egg. Feeling this strong sense of oppression from her body, their minds were a little messy, and they sighed a little. What were they thinking about? They just obediently went back to study and didn't dare to think too much about other things. Anyway, they really didn't intend to touch this damn thing, even if they died. That was really terrible. Even if they could enjoy it for a lifetime, they had to not play themselves to death when they received it, and they really didn't have the confidence to receive it. They really didn't have the confidence to do it. Well, The occasional thing that happened was already considered a leisure event in their busy lives. Although this leisure was a little ridiculous, it was the essence of it. Now, their schedule was like a spinning top. If they had nothing to do, they would spin in circles until they were dizzy and vomiting blood. If something else happened, they could treat it as a luxurious rest time. Usually, after the rest, they would be followed by a little stimulation. After the stimulation, they would be 3 times more motivated to study. In this regard, Sui Feng said, if you don't get kicked, you won't be able to force yourself to stay awake. And once you do, you'll be forcing yourself to go down the path of little brother Feng. You will start to accumulate pressure and play with your life to death. Everyone agreed that this result was quite terrible, so they decisively stopped the 3 times speed. They still had to rest when they needed to rest. A certain observer finally met with a backlash after enduring for 5 years. He deserved it. Oh no, he deserved it. Why did it sound like they were looking forward to the day something happened to him? Little brother Feng didn't do anything wrong. It was just the same old problem that had been discussed for a long time. He was tired and couldn't take it anymore. Every day, he pushed himself to death. Did he really think of himself as the god of origin? But the god of origin and the others didn't go to such extremes. Looking at the conch house and all the junk on the floor, they also had a normal life. Occasionally, they would read, write, fish, and in their spare time, they would make a pot of tea to chat, brag, and tease their children to change their mentality and mood. He had reason to believe that even in the long 326th years of the Chaos Era, they also had other activities other than fighting. That's right, teasing their children was definitely the most important thing in that era besides boxing with the Chaos concept body. After all life in the world were disciples. That was the situation back then. His Eminence had mentioned it. So, why did Feng keep pushing himself to death when it came to him? They didn't know. Of course, they knew his thoughts and wishes, which were the direct cause of his current situation. But did he really have to? Phew, forget it. Let's not try to figure out his thoughts. 5 days later, Maple jumped out of bed as if she was counting the seconds and yawned as she walked out of the conch house. She sat down and did not even take a sip of tea before she began to work on her origin energy, which made them feel very tired. But after a while, Maple remembered that his girl had just finished switching forms. So, he went over to check on her, told her some of his thoughts and experiences, and helped to guide and perfect the form. It was as if she had switched from one busy thing to another. Speaking of which, they didn't expect the little phoenix's form to be incomplete. Well, it seemed that they were stunned by the aura that was comparable to that of a high-level premier, causing them to be unable to see things clearly. Of course, it was also true that they didn't understand this deadly form of power. It was better to stay as far away from it as possible. Let Feng and the little phoenix figure out on their own, and they wouldn't get involved. Well, they wouldn't get involved. Let's first deal with it according to these 3 conditions. As for the second stage, let me integrate the origin energy into it, and the 3rd stage will be free. Go where the limit is. This will take a long time to deal with, so don't be anxious. It's useless if you're anxious, and you won't get a good result. Just deal with it step by step. In addition, dealing with the structure of the rule, order, and energy form will consume a lot of energy in the beginning. It will consume a lot of energy in all aspects. You'll get tired easily, so remember to rest in time and don't force yourself. When he said this, the atmosphere became awkward. Everyone looked at him strangely and couldn't help but criticize him in their hearts. Damn it, you're the one who needs rest the most. Why are you nagging others to rest every day? If you continue, you'll become a small ball sooner or later. Hui patted Sui Feng's shoulder and pointed at himself. Then, he raised his chin and walked toward Maple under everyone's gazes. He patted Maple's shoulder and said earnestly, Maple, you should rest too. We all know that a certain someone pushed himself to the limit a few days ago. He was so exhausted that he almost lost control of his soul. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him, crossed his arms, and thought for a moment. Then, he admitted helplessly, I am really tired. I can't hold it anymore. Everyone was shocked. He didn't say, I'm fine, or I'm in good condition this time. Shouldn't he say, "I'm in good condition. What can you do to me?" with his hands on his hips? Why did he say this? Hui shuddered violently and stepped back a few meters. He pointed at Feng with his shield and sword and said, "Who's the demon?" Puff. Everyone watched as a guardian was knocked down by a huge brick and laughed in silence. It seemed that it was indeed the real guardian. Glancing at everyone, Yin Nuoxing continued to sigh. "Give me some more time. Now is not the time to rest. After all, that massive energy is still slowly evaporating. If I don't finish dealing with this energy, I won't be able to rest in peace. Wait until I've dealt with these troublesome matters. I'll go and rest." Everyone was indifferent. It was the same ending. Nothing had changed. The only difference was that he actually admitted that he was really tired and couldn't hold it anymore. As for the reason he said, "Sigh," it was indeed something that needed to be done quickly. As it disappeared and evaporated bit by bit, every passing minute and second would require more time in the future to make up for it. It was not worth it. In their calculations, it was obvious that it was impossible for the observer to deal with all the origin energy before he went out to battle. This was not the incomplete state it was before. The complete origin energy was not so easy to deal with. There was not enough time left. So now, they could only let him deal with it and torture himself. What else could they do? They could not help him in this matter. Occasionally, they would laugh and joke. Occasionally, they would make a fuss. Occasionally, they would sigh about why a certain someone was not resting. Then they would sigh about how the class really made their brains explode. From there, they would talk about the various torments and unfriendliness of the origin energy. It gave him a deeper understanding of the suffering of the inheritors. Basically, their days slowly wandered in this rhythm. Now, when they sat down, their minds would wander about matters related to the origin while watching a certain someone's calm expression and heavy atmosphere as he tormented the origin energy. They would tease him from time to time. Occasionally, they would torment him and occasionally find a place to practice. The function of the tower in the Fortress of Origin really gave them, the masochist, the perfect place to go. Now, other than Maple's shadow, who had been beaten up by the frontline Order warriors for many years, there were also many more shadows, such as his. However, everyone said that it was really frustrating and demoralizing to fight a wooden stake that could not be broken no matter how hard they hit it. At first glance, he threw out thousands of layers of energy barriers, which were so heavy that they were too tired to lift their swords. Even if they went all out and smashed the barriers, they could not shake a certain guardian's defense at all. Furthermore, he kept taunting them in the shield, causing them to have high blood pressure and low blood pressure. It was like riding a roller coaster. Gradually, their bodies could not withstand the torment, and so they gave up. Because of this, his shadow was not very popular and did not get hit much. It made him feel helpless. He was born to be a shield. He was sorry, but Maple was more professional in terms of sparring. Or perhaps, everyone actually preferred to be abused. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the intention of those who challenged Maple's pseudo-advanced premier form. Time just went by like this day after day. Half of the time was spent leisurely, and the other half was occupied with affairs. He was constantly going in circles amidst his busy and idle time. Unknowingly, another few thousand years had passed, and then he welcomed another node. No, it was not a matter of life and death. It was just that little green child shouted to them that there was a guest coming to the front line. It made them turn over in the sea of bitterness between the 2 points and the line. At this time, there is no need to elaborate on who was running to the front line of the void. It seemed that her thousands of years of effort in the realm of the gods had finally yielded some results. Of course, it was also possible that there was no result at all. She was just here to report or to say something. In short, they tidied themselves up and made tea at their usual seats. Just as they sat down, they saw her descending from the sky. "I haven't seen you for a while. How did you all become like this?" As soon as the little girl ended, she looked up and saw everyone with dark circles under their eyes. Half of them had dead fish eyes, while the other half had lifeless eyes that had lost their luster. She was immediately frightened. In this situation, Feng Ling, who was holding on, looked more energetic. She was particularly surprised. What have you all been through all these years? Yin Nuashing shrugged. You don't have to pay attention to them. They're abusing themselves. Gradually, they became like this. The little girl's face twitched. Abusing themselves? Have they finally gone crazy and gradually approached you? So, how is the situation in the realm of the gods? Yin Nuashing coughed dryly and changed the topic. Nothing unusual. Everything is fine. The little girl climbed onto a chair and thought for a moment. Then, she reported in detail. There are many premier tiers in the realm of the gods, but their realms are not very high. At present, the internal situation is stable. If there are no accidents, it should continue to be stable. In short, there is nothing special that requires your attention. Oh, Yin Nuashing held the cup with both hands. It was within her expectations. The appearance of many premier tiers in the realm of the gods was also a possibility after dealing with the situation in the realm of the gods. Should I bring some of my people over? Cough, cough. Let's talk about it later. Then, the core of the 8 primordial realms. No. The little girl shrugged and replied matter-of-factly. Although I have imagined that it might be in the realm of the gods, it is only a fantasy. However, I did find traces of the core of the 8 primordial realms in the realm of the gods, and she purposely paused for a moment. This seemingly unexpected situation made Yin Nuashing and Hui calm down and look at her. There are 2 traces. One is the same as what you said last time. It points to the time of the birth of the new era. However, based on the fact that the realm of the gods was born a little later, it can be determined that the void turbulence can indeed erase the time of the traces. Thus, we have obtained proof. The little girl took a sip of tea and sighed in relief. Then there is the second trace. It is the trace that appeared 40 eras after the void turbulence. Puffed. We turned his head and spat out a mouthful of tea. 40 eras? It was nesting in the realm of the gods at that time. The little girl frowned and blew bubbles into her tea for a while. After drinking it, she replied, if the traces are correct, that is the case. The trace existed for about an era, or maybe just a little short of an era, and then disappeared. It disappeared all of a sudden. It probably teleported away on its own, not even leaving behind a path for me to follow. I have also wandered around the conceptual layer of the realm of the gods for a long time, but I did not find any useful clues. She sighed and took another sip of tea before jumping off the chair and saying to Feng Ling, well, that's about it. I closed the door when I left, so I came to inform you. You're leaving? Where are you going this time? This time, I'm not going to the lower primordial realm. Let's take a stroll in the realm of the 8 primordial realms. Since I found traces of recent times in the realm of the gods, it should still be in the realm of the 8 primordial realms. Everyone, recent times? 16 epochs ago was considered a recent period of time, right? Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Just as she was about to get up and send them off, she suddenly sat down again. She quickly took out a crystal ball and put on the table. Hey, wait a minute. Do you recognize this thing? What? What is this? I was just nesting in the realm of the gods for a while. What happened in the void? What was projected in the crystal ball was naturally the big white nail. After thousands of years, it had taken root in the void a little deeper. They had also heard about its activities many times. However, other than the occasional movement of the pupa, there was no other news. It seems to be some kind of thing that has taken root in the void. The little girl frowned. It seems to be a bit of a living thing. Yin Nuashing and the others were all stunned. Is this a F***king living thing? No, that's not what I mean. I don't know what it is either, but it's definitely not a living thing. The little girl shook her head. I just said that it has traces of activity similar to living things. Such as something like a pulse, energy veins. Ah, yes, energy veins. If I'm not mistaken, it relies on these energy veins to control itself. Do you have any more detailed information? Yin Nuashing muttered and told them all the information that little green child had brought back over the years. As she spoke, she also sorted out the information. If that's the case, it should be a huge entity. The little girl spread her hands and gestured the size of the entity. It's a huge entity that covers the upper, middle, and lower planes and penetrates the lower levels of the void. As for whether it appeared in the previous era, well, there's no way to determine anything from this. A huge entity. He was a little stunned as he listened. He imagined a strange entity with a huge body that could even cover the entire void. He could not help but gulp. There's such a thing in the void. Well, isn't it right in front of you? The little girl shrugged. I don't know the specifics. As for the characteristics that you mentioned, it should be some kind of self-defense mechanism. Forget it. Anyway, I can't guess anything more. Give me a few coordinates. I'll check it out while I'm walking around. After getting a few coordinates from Feng Ling, she widened her eyes. These positions are a little. Why does it seem like they're very close to the void front line? How is this close? Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. It's like taking root in the corner of our house. They often appear in the void that we have not explored. Maybe that's why we only accidentally discovered them when they got close. This thing can't be dismantled or touched. It's frustrating. The little girl said, okay. Anyway, I'll see what's going on. I'll let you know when I have any news. Chapter 2064. Time silently made people numb. After getting used to the process of day after day, everything would become stiff because of this. Whether it was comfortable or busy, the sea of time that was placed there would not stop because of any factors. It would only sweep up everything in the void and rush towards the end of time. After leaving a mark that was so deep that it could make the void tremble, it would only stop for a little bit of time. Perhaps a day or two. Or perhaps it did not intend to stop at all. It was just like checking in, leaving a mark, and continuing forward. He did not know what would happen when the void tremor happened. He was prepared for it, but based on the current situation, he probably would not be able to wait until then. It was the end of the Dark Age. He did not know how many days were left before the void tremor, but the realm of the gods would be penetrated. That nightmarish image lingered in his mind and refused to go away. It was like a sharp thorn in his soul and heart. It was also the reason why he did not stop for a long time. Anyway, it was heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching. It was so heart-wrenching that he wanted to drag the entire third defense line over. When the time came, he wanted to finish everything in one fell swoop. If he could not win the first round of attack, it would be useless even if he had left something behind. He did not know how much time had passed and how much the third defense line had evolved. The countless magic circles and nodes that he had left behind had now changed along with him. The number of magic circles that he had left behind was not the main point. He was more concerned about the large pile of magic circles that he had left behind at the third defense line. To dismantle or not to dismantle? It would not take much effort to dismantle the third defense line and move it back to the second defense line. Dismantling it and placing it at the front line to increase their strength? It seemed that there was no need for that. The underworld was too lazy to send people out, and there was no need for them to replenish their strength. They might as well just carry it on their backs and rush into the underworld and smash it out in one go. Are you really going to dismantle the third defense line? Hui was holding a diamond-shaped crystal spire in his hands. When he heard this, his hands trembled, and hundreds of thumb-sized crystals fell to the ground and the table. He held his head with both hands and screamed, I've spent 300 hours on this crystal spire. Yin Nuoxing looked at him, speechless. He bent down to pick up the crystals on the ground and threw them on the table. They were toys made by the god of origin, used to train the power of origin. There were all kinds of toys in that pile of junk, and he had played with a dozen of them. He had to admit that they were better at tormenting people. These little toys were not easy to deal with. They were brain-burning and time-consuming. In general terms, it would be a cup of tea, a book, and a toy would take a year to dismantle. Yes, the book was the instruction manual. Why are you so agitated? He rolled his eyes at Hui and took out a palm-sized crystal cube from his trouser pocket. He pushed it into the pile of crystals on the table and said, I brought it all back. Damn, I've never heard you say that before. Just a few days ago, I went with the girl and Shuang to dismantle the entire third defense line. After dismantling it, I smelted it and used it as another trump card. It's still evolving inside. I'll smelt it every once in a while, and add dozens of magic arrays. Yun Nuashing breathed a sigh of relief. She pinched her eyebrows and looked a little troubled. After thinking about it, I still don't want to leave any way out. Just charge in once. Once. Why leave any way out? Leaving any way out is just giving myself some unrealistic fantasies. Fight with your back to the river. Put yourself in a perilous situation and fight to survive. Just be like before. You still want to leave a way out, even at this point. If people in the past knew about it, they would laugh themselves to death. Huh. Although that's true. We looked at him blankly for a while. He was holding the crystals in front of him and was a little quiet. Suddenly, he noticed that there were many streams of colorful light flowing out of Hao Ren's body from time to time. The light then burst into dense energy particles and slowly dissipated. Huey's attention was diverted. What's wrong with your body? Why is it leaking air like a sieve? Oh, it's a sign that the origin energy is about to be converted to 90%. Yin Nuashing answered while clenching her fist. When she saw Hui was so shocked that he broke the crystal tower in his hand again, she rolled her eyes again. Is it necessary? It's not like you don't know that I've been dealing with the origin energy. 90% is not the limit. Although 90% is the realm that only the peak of Yuanshi can step into. But in the situation of deduction, my soul should be able to withstand it, so there's no need to worry. But you guys, the seal? It seems that it's too early to talk about it. Hui also rolled his eyes and threw the crystal tower in his hand at Hao Run. It's only been a few million years, and you're already talking about the seal? Even if the origin energy can continue to wear down the seal, in the end, it's a fixed amount of time. It's still too early. That's true, although I feel that it's been a long time, almost 10 million years. Fiddling with the crystal tower in her hand, Yin Nuashing let out a long breath and looked up at the sky that seemed to be made of ice crystals. A bright sun hung in the sky of the ice field. It was not known when Siyu put it up. The sun shone on the space that was washed clean by the ice and snow. Countless energy particles with light were captured by the space here and gathered, making it look like the place was reflecting light everywhere. It was a little dazzling. Shuang Shuang and the little angel sat side by side at the edge of the huge circle of frost descent and whispered to each other. From time to time, their eyes fell on him. Mei Mao had some strange emotions in her eyes, which made him shudder. It was normal for them to get along with each other. But when they got together and laughed while looking at him, they were probably discussing how to torture him. Generally speaking, the more people involved, the worse he would be tortured. For example, in the past 10 million years, why did he bring up those sorrowful memories? Evil spirits retreat. Speaking of which, your transformation, mastery, and proficiency of the origin energy should have reached the limit of your current realm, right? He tilted his head and looked at Hui, who was still persistently piling up the crystal tower in his hand. He looked at Hui up and down for a while. Yes, it's already over. Hui nodded. When he saw Maple's puzzled look, he handed the crystal tower in his hand forward. But the exploration of the origin energy is not over yet. Don't think of us as Shuang Shuang, the exception of the exception of the exception. When he said this, his face suddenly turned gloomy. Yin Nuashing did not know whether to laugh or cry. A long time ago, when everyone knew that Shuang Shuang had nothing to do, he would never forget the collective depression of everyone and the expression of their eyes losing their focus. It was like a hard-earned holiday suddenly being washed away by an overtime notice. Well, Shuang Shuang relied on herself as the origin life and the help of the two ice gods' creations, so her speed was faster than light. This was what he learned from Xiao Xiao after the event. However, there was definitely more to be done. Shuang Shuang was also continuing her exploration of the essence to see if she could find something fun. That was this thing that required a flash of inspiration that coincided with the origin energy, had a probability similar to a lottery. 1 in 10,000 chances would be reserved in advance. Well, that was pretty much what it meant, but it wasn't as exaggerated as that. So, you're also rolling on the path of exploring the origin energy? Hui glanced at him and muttered as he fiddled with the crystal tower in his hand. Yes, it's because I know when the realm of chaos comes crashing down, I will have to take the entire place. Well, I definitely can't take the entire place, but at least I have to share at least half of the pressure with you. I am now trying very hard to explore the origin energy. Huh? Origin energy? Doesn't that mean? Just think of it as me previewing. Yin Nu Washing. Can this thing be previewed? Yes, the book, 999 Ways to Survive with a Shield Left Behind by Her Eminence, mentioned the origin domain, but it's a digression. Yin Nu Washing. What kind of strange book is this? Hui was multitasking as he fiddled with the crystal tower in his hand. At the same time, he answered very seriously, I am very compatible with the power of my goddess. There are several conditions that determine that I can explore the origin energy in advance, but it is only an exploration in advance. With my current condition, it is indeed a little difficult to support the origin energy. First, I need to lay the foundation. When the time comes for me to ascend to the higher level, and when I raise the conversion of my origin energy to 70%, I should be able to feel the threshold in advance. Yin Nu Washing. Is there still a division into upper, middle, and lower levels? Isn't it formed in one go? Being stared at by Maple with a strange expression, Hui laughed dryly. Ahem, that's what it means. Anyway, you can look forward to it a little. Hey, let's not talk about me. How is your origin energy? It's SOSO? Yin Nu Washing tilted his head. This time, it was Huey's turn to look at him with a strange expression, but he could not do anything about it. He could only shrug. Just treat it as if there is no progress. For now, the conditions should be enough. Her power as the leader and the other 48 types of origin energy have all met the conditions. But in terms of exploring the origin energy, I don't feel anything at all. How should I put it? It's like I know there's a lump in my body, but I can't touch it no matter what. It's an awkward feeling. It's like the door is not locked, but I can't push it open. Oh, Hui said. Then according to your temperament, you should just break the door open. Break the door open. What's the procedure? Just break the door and the wall together. Yin Nu Washing, after nearly 10 million years, he had finally used up the energy, but in fact he did not know whether it was used up or evaporated. Well, anyway, there was a harvest, but he was very concerned about how much had evaporated out of thin air. Even if he knew, there was nothing he could do to remedy it. At present, nearly 90% of the 49 types of origin energy at the forefront had been transformed, and the rest were not directly put aside, but their priority was relatively low. Since the conditions were now good enough, he still wanted to spend some effort to explore the origin energy. Unfortunately, he could not find the way. Pa! Startled by the sudden sound on the table, Yin Nu Washing hurriedly came back to his senses. He saw that Hui had cleared most of the things on the table and placed a heavy book on the table. It was really heavy. He had never seen a book that was bigger than a person. This thing that was 2 meters long, half a meter wide, and 2 meters high. This must be a door plank, right? The cover of the book was painted with a lot of very gorgeous golden lines that looked quite powerful. If it was placed in front of the sun, it could use the reflection of the lines to blind people's eyes. There was also a picture of a fire giant standing on a city wall with a shield in both hands. A line of big words was written on the top of the book. How to build a great wall in your origin energy. The name of the book was left for Hui. He lifted this very heavy book and knocked on the cover with his finger. With a strange expression, he said, "This thing can enrich your experience when opened. If you close it, it can probably flip the top of someone's head off. Do you believe that if you embed it on your guardian shield, it will increase your defense by 100 times? Ahem, don't worry about these details. What's important is the content inside the content." Hui grinned at him. This brick. No. I remember there's a tutorial about the origin energy in this book. He suddenly turned his head. But I don't remember if it's this book or not. Recently, I've been reading a lot of books. When I turn the book, hundreds of pages of content will crash into my mind. It's so confusing that I can't tell which is which. If it's not this, it might be something in the other dozens of books. Yin Nu Washing was silent for a while. Before opening the book, she took out another light ball from her pocket and held it in her arms. That is the thing she collected about Luo, creation god. See, you gave it to me after she finished using it. but I've always forgotten about it. If you don't bring me this book today, I may not remember this." He held the light ball in his hand for a while, then put it on his head. Then, under Huey's malicious gaze, he opened the cover of this door plank. His breath stagnated for a moment. The densely packed catalog was as black as a piece of graffiti. Without a magnifying glass, one could probably see through it. "What's this? Is there a need to write so small? The words at the back are even smaller." Hui shrugged. "It's so densely packed that the whole page is filled. At first, I thought that my venerable god scribbled on it as a prank. It wasn't until I lay on it and stared at it that I understood the reason. This is the rhythm of drowning me with words. Can it be divided into top, middle, and bottom?" Yin Nuashing turned her head and spat out her soul. We saw him flipping through the book with a headache and couldn't help but laugh. "It's finally your turn to read. Ha ha ha. Do you want to absorb physics knowledge at this time? I'm afraid you've been infected by Qing Jun." Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at him fiercely. This kid must have been reading books until his head went bald. Now, seeing others reading books could make him happy. Well, it was no wonder. After all, he had been dealing with these things for nearly 10 million years. After eliminating a lot of tedious things, I actually like reading books on weekdays. Have you forgotten? I haven't forgotten, but Huey's evil smile was still on his face, and there was a bit of banter. "In fact, you just spread out the book and stare blankly for a third of the time, right? Oh, that's not considered leisure time. Most of the time. Ah, yes, just like now." Yin Nuashing sighed and shook her head. "On one hand, there are tedious things, and on the other hand, there are books that are not for leisure and thinking about life. How can I be idle? During the time when I'm absent-minded, I'm mostly thinking about fireworks." We scratch his head. If that was the case, the last time Maple was really holding a book and reading leisurely without thinking about anything was probably more than 5 years ago. As for this thing, alas, it seems that I have to focus on reading books for a while. What a headache. Seeing that Maple was gradually engrossed and concentrating the remaining half of his energy, Hui sighed softly in his heart. He tiptoed and packed up his things and stood up. At this time, he would not disturb this busy guy. He should go to the void front line and have a look. He had been staying in the observer space for a long time and had not gone out. Although he was in regular contact with Little Green, God knows what had become of the outside world. Just after taking 2 steps, he heard a sudden scream behind him, followed by Maple's anxious voice, which startled him. Hey, what do you want to do? You just discussed for a long time to do." While I'm reading books, don't. Clothes can't. Ears can't. Wow, what are you two doing today?" He thought with his toes and knew what was going on. He did not dare to look back and quickly ran away. When Howren came out of the observer dimension, it was dusk in Node Zero City. The setting sun dyed the sky red. Snowflakes fell from the cloudless sky, forming a thin layer on the ground. Howren was startled. He wondered if Little Greenie or someone else had the time to change the weather of the Node City. Snow! How long has it been since I last saw such a scene? My memories of normal life seem to have become very blurry under the erosion of endless time. I can't remember the details of the things that happened in the past, and I can't remember the last time I felt happy because of the change in the weather. It did not take much effort to find Little Qingzi. Although Little Qingzi appeared in various places in the Void frontline, there were still a few fixed spots with a higher probability of appearing. Howren only needed to run to 2 locations before he found Little Qingzi. It was in the large garden south of the Node City. Maple had told him that there was such a garden here many years ago. But other than Little Qingzi, Howren also saw something else. By the lakeside where leaves and petals were falling, Little Green was holding 2 crystal balls in his left and right hands. There were a few floating beside him. He was busy shaking his head from side to side. It seemed that he was probably confirming the days, check-in, or busy with various matters in the Void frontline. Beside him stood a tall and beautiful girl with long brown curly hair. She was also holding 2 crystal balls in her hands. She looked at Little Green with a helpless expression. Oh, this is probably that. Ahem, it seems that Little Green is not a good person to disturb. I don't want to be a third wheel. However, just as he turned around and was about to slip away, the girl suddenly turned her head and exclaimed, Lord Huey's face was a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and hid his expression. Little Green also hurriedly put down the things in his hands and looked embarrassed. Lord Hui, how come you have time to come here? Oh, I'm bored from reading, so I came out for a walk. Hui waved his hand and walked up to them. He winked at Little Green and patted him on the shoulder with a gentle face. You're not young anymore. Hurry up and get married if you have a girlfriend. The girl suddenly covered her mouth and giggled. Little Green blushed and hurriedly responded loudly. Don't be like an old father urging me to get married. I didn't succeed in forcing Maple to marry me last time. Can't you let me have some fun with you? Hui shrugged and looked away from Little Green, who was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a castle on the ground. He looked at the dozens of crystal balls floating beside them and asked, What are you busy with? As soon as they talked about what they were just talking about, Little Green immediately hid his embarrassment and put on a serious face. The anomaly in the void was discovered about 10 million years ago. The big nail that Maple mentioned? The white one? The nail. The nail. Little Green's cheeks trembled and he nodded. Recently, we found that its activities are much more active than in the past 10 million years. In the past, it was active about once a month. Each time, the situation was different. Maybe there was a sudden energy reaction that gathered a lot of energy, or it suddenly continued to extend into the depths of the void, or it expanded horizontally and divided into many branches. But about half a year ago, its activity has shortened from once a month to once every half a month, and there's a little abnormal vibration every day. Lord Maple has repeatedly asked us to pay attention to this thing that is making him uneasy, but we can't find out more than monitoring it. It still can't touch or be affected. Logically speaking, if it can absorb energy from the void, our energy should also be able to mix with the void and enter it together. But why is it that our energy is precisely picked out and can't touch it at all? I don't know why. God knows what's going on with this thing. Anyway, we can't go wrong by continuing to monitor it. But, well, since the frequency of its abnormal activity is increasing, let's keep a distance. Just in case, we can react in time. We picked up a ball and looked at the image recorded in it. The nail had a lot of branches as if it had cracked. No wonder Maple's girl said it was like a tree root. By the way, have you found its source? No. The progress of the exploration has been, Little Green paused and took out a grayish-blue energy crystal from his pocket. By the way, hundreds of thousands of years ago, you and Lord Maple's friend came here, but just left a message for me to pass on to you and then left. It's related to that thing. When you mentioned the source, I remembered. That girl, she left after leaving a message. She's a busy person. Hui muttered and touched the grayish-blue energy crystal. A paragraph was clearly reflected in his mind. The source has disappeared, or it's hidden in the void. It's very far from the branches. This thing is suspected to be a man-made creation that solidifies the void. Hui was a little stunned after reading this paragraph. The source disappeared just like that. Suspected to be a man-made creation that solidifies the void. What? What did it mean? On the surface, he understood the meaning. He didn't know who hit the void randomly and turned it into a strange creation, but the meaning behind it. He didn't understand. He didn't understand. Forget it. This wasn't something he could get involved in. He threw the message back to Maple and let him see what the situation was. As soon as he came back to his senses, he saw Little Green whispering something to the girl with the brown hair, laughing happily. Damn, he wanted to run away quickly, but he still had something to say, so he could only interrupt the two. I still have something to say. I Ching and the girl immediately stuck out their tongues and stopped talking. They listened to Huey's words and were deep in thought. The top combat power of the void frontline now. Little Green lowered his head and rubbed his chin. He slowly answered, at present, excluding some people who joined the void frontline later, all of them are in the primeval stage. As for the mid-level primeval stage, they make up about 50%. After Lord Maple adjusted the source law last time, the seal was worn down faster. If we follow Lord Maple's plan, we might be able to what? When did Maple adjust the source law? Hui was stunned. How come I don't know about this? 2 or 3 million years ago. That's quite a long time ago. It seems that he used the origin energy for something. Well, with some adjustments, the Order warriors who have already adapted to the origin energy can wear down the seal a little faster. Although it's just a little bit, but over time, we might be able to pull it apart for some time. Little Green looked at Huey's widened eyes and pondered. He scratched his head and continued. By the time Lord Maple specified, we should have a lot of mid-level primeval stage elites at the front line, as well as a considerable number of high-level primeval stage elites. Well, that's a matter for the future. Although the future is foreseeable, it still requires a lot of effort. High-level primeval stage. Hui sighed and looked at the void with one hand on his waist. It seems that we should prepare for that. But aren't we always in a state of preparation? Well, I don't mean this kind of preparation for war. I mean the preparation for the formal attack. Hui waved his hand. But you don't have to worry about that. Hui, Maple, I have discussed it. Sigh. Fighting into the underworld is also a troublesome matter. The situation there, although I think your Lord Maple might just throw down the words improvise and say that the preparations are done. I Ching and the girl smiled bitterly. We glanced at them and patted Little Green's shoulder kindly. So, when are we going to get married? Why do you have to rush us to get married? Chapter 2065. Things that happened in the void were usually silent and unpredictable. Occasionally, there would be situations that could not be judged. For example, the strange big nail. They thought it was just a strange void anomaly and thought it would disappear after a while. Never did they expect it to be some kind of indescribable creation. They did not know who created it and what it was used for. The only thing that made them feel at ease was that it was not doing anything now. Oh, it wasn't that it wasn't active. It was just that it hadn't been messing around in the void yet. It hadn't shown any signs of trouble like the permanent points, so it made them feel a little more at ease. But it was only a little. For the time being, they just had Little Green raise its attention level by half a level, and then there was nothing else. There was no way to deal with it, so they just left it there and continued to pay attention. He patted Little Chingzi's arm and urged him to get married again. Little Chingzi was so anxious that he jumped up and down. Then he slipped away happily and returned to the observer space. He saw that Feng was still reading a book with a gloomy face. His shoulders were so heavy that they drooped unnaturally. Thinking about it, he went over and mentioned it to him. Changes. Yin Nuashing turned a page of the book that looked like a door and put the light ball on her head on the table. There are only two factors that can affect a creation related to the void. The void is calm for a while, so it is not a problem of the void. It can only be the influence of another party, the person or group that created this strange creation. And the sudden change is probably that group of people or that person doing something. Something related to the void? What could it be? Hui sat back on the chair and continued to stare at the crystal tower in his hand. He was a little confused. God knows, there are so many things that can be done. Yin Nuashing exhaled indifferently. As long as it doesn't affect us for the time being, we won't care about it. Of course, the main reason is that we can't affect it. Let hang there. I thought of a situation. Just because we can't affect it doesn't mean that its level is higher than ours. It might just be a very special existence that follows its rules. If we don't follow its rules, we might not be able to affect it. However, this kind of creation related to the void must have something similar to its core and source. If we can find its core, many problems can be solved. However, if you really want to destroy it, minor void turbulence can definitely do it. It's just that the price is too high. After Hui heard this, he directly shattered the crystal pagoda in his hand and stared at him with a green face. Let's forget about this. That's what I thought too. That's why I've been saying that I'll just leave it there. Yin Nuashing shrugged. Compared to those things, the preparation for attack that you mentioned reminded me of something that I talked to Xiao Xiao and Sui Qing before. We felt that the atmosphere had become much more formal. He could not help but sit up a little straighter and crossed his hands. His face was as calm as water. Go on. He scratched his head as soon as he said those two words. It feels weird. It's like I haven't been so serious for a long time. It was only when I was fighting in the realm of the gods, and occasionally when there was a large-scale operation, that I would be so serious. Because most of the things that came after were improvised and could not be arranged. The strategies and plans mentioned in the past could be wiped clean when the tide of the void hits. Standing in the void, no amount of arrangements could compare to the impact of its activity. So, we just need to improvise and then firmly hold on to the truth that can deal with sudden changes. Yin chuckled dryly, cleared his throat, and picked up the ball on the table. Back to the original topic. A while ago, I've forgotten how many years ago, Xiao Xiao had me arrange a surprise attack on the Death Mist Rift in the Abyss to verify something. Hui was dumbfounded. What did you guys do while I was busy chewing on books and pulling out my hair, adjusting the source laws, and suddenly sending troops to attack the Death Mist Rift in the Abyss? It's not like I had to arrange for everyone to do something important. If not for my poor condition, I would have gone to test it out myself. Yin glanced at Hui and saw that his face was alternating between white and red. After stuttering for a long time without saying anything, she said flatly, "It was just a normal test. We moved the Origin Temple to the Void Rift. Block the door and kill it? No. We tried to throw the Origin Temple inside." Yin rolled her eyes and shook her head. But it failed. It was blocking the door, and there was no way to drag it in. There are only two ways for us to attack the underworld. One is to find where they are hiding in the void, and the other is to rush into the Death Mist Rift in the Abyss. No matter where they come out from, they would definitely be in the underworld, and even a slightly more remote location would be close to the underworld. When the time comes, we just have to find a way to locate their base. We basically skipped the first method. They control most of the void and hold the incomplete power of the Origin God. They also have beings at the pinnacle of the primeval, and the space they're determined to hide is basically completely isolated. There's no way to locate them through the Death Mist Rift, so we have to go with the second method. That's why we had to bring the Origin Temple to crash into the door. Oh, Hui said after listening to that part. But we found that the rift couldn't fit the Origin Temple inside. Yin nodded. The Origin Temple was blocked outside the Death Mist Rift. They probably did something over there. There's no telling if they would be wary of that. Let's just say that they were prepared because they were wary. But here's the problem. The Origin Temple couldn't be put in a pocket and taken away, nor could it be broken through directly. The Origin Temple, and, of course, the Fort of Origins. To put it another way, they were a nail that pinned themselves in the void. It was the same when they were placed in the World Luminous Cluster, and when they took root, they would root the World Luminous Cluster in the void as well. So far, there had been no problems. Even if the World Light had taken root together with the World Light, it could still be pushed away. This was how it had been done back when it had captured the permanent point and drained its blood. However, it couldn't be placed in a pocket. In other words, the Origin Holy Temple couldn't place the World Light in the World Light and then stuff the World Light into its soul to sneak away. The reason was simple. The Fort of Origins and the Origin Temple were essentially nodes, and the realm of order that was rooted in the void was the area of influence of the node. If they were rooted in the World Luminous Cluster, according to Xiao Xiao, their power could cover the entire World Luminous Cluster and turn it into a void node. In other words, the World Luminous Cluster was so heavy that it couldn't be put in a pocket. I've heard that the Origin Temple couldn't be carried around, but I didn't expect that there was such a detail. Hui was a little dumbfounded as he filled in that part of his knowledge. That means the soul couldn't hold the World Luminous Cluster with the realm of order. By the same logic, it couldn't be carried around directly, and the reason is the same. He scratched his head and thought for a while, feeling that he had found a blind spot. Then, can't we close the Origin Temple and the Fort of Origins and put them in a pocket before bringing them over? Yes, but do you know how much energy and time it would take to reopen the Fort of Origins and the Origin Temple after closing them? Yin tapped the World Luminous Cluster in her pocket, making a hollow echo. It would take half an hour just to start them up, and the energy consumption. We have energy sources to offset that, so let's not talk about energy for now. After they're activated, they would roar at the void, so there's no need to worry about the energy consumption after they're activated. They could keep fighting in their most powerful state until the end of eternity. What we need to pay attention to is the situation when they're activated. The Fort of Origins is a little more special. It has a bunch of cores, and its original intention is to load the cores to unleash more power, while the cores are used as auxiliary energy sources. Now that we don't even have enough cores, its various levels would more or less drop a little, but it should be enough. As for the time needed to activate it, about 2 hours? Half an hour? 2 hours? Huey's face twitched for a while. We'll be dead by the time they activate it. They've never considered shutting it down since they came out of the furnace. As I said earlier, they can fight until the end of time, and there's no need to worry about energy consumption at all. It's only now that we've encountered this kind of problem that it's a little headache. Yin Nuashing replied as she shrugged and continued to flip through her book. Her nonchalant look made Huey's eyes widen, and he could not help but raise his voice a little. Don't be so calm. The Fort of Origins and the Origin Temple are our most important foundation. Why don't we find a way to drag them in and fight them? Don't worry. Yin Nuashing smiled mysteriously at him. I made some preparations a long time ago that can solve this problem. My original intention was not to deal with this matter. After all, I didn't know that the Origin Temple would not be able to be brought over. It's just a coincidence that this happened. Can't you just finish the conclusion? The conclusion is, I have a way to bring the complete node into the underworld, so don't worry. Do what you need to do now. It's not worth the effort. Seeing that Feng was flipping through the book calmly, Hui was not worried at all. He had said a long time ago that Feng was the most concerned about this matter. Since he was not in a hurry, it meant that this matter had come to an end. There was no need to worry. Although he did not know what Feng had done, he would know when the time came. Speaking of which, when he first came back, he did not see anything wrong with Feng. Before he went out, Feng was yelling as if he was going to be done the next second. Hui even carefully peeked for a while, but he found that nothing happened. Now the little angel and Ming were still on the Ring of Frost, still peeking at Feng. He did not know what they had just done. Noticing that his thoughts were a little off track, Hui quickly came back to his senses. He steadied the crystal tower in his hand, took a deep breath to calm down, and casually found a topic to talk about. How's the domain of origin? He really touched the pot that did not boil. Feng had just started reading not long ago, and he already asked this question. A little gain, a little feeling. Yin Nuashing nodded slightly. Huey's eyes widened, and he almost dropped the toy in his hand. However, this is something that I left for you. It's not particularly compatible with me. Moreover, I want to use the energy of destruction as the core and the other 48 types of energy of origin as auxiliary. So, I have to convert this part of the information that I saw before it can be used. It's not as good as it's more versatile if it's targeted. Hui sighed. But when he talked about himself, he had a strange expression. But the domain of origin is not universal. Which divine religion of origin does not teach their own people according to their targeted teachings. At most, they would mention the characteristics of other people's disciples so that they can cooperate better. They would definitely not use the universal method. Feng, you're such a troublemaker. Yin Nuashing, although it might be true, but why do you have to mention those 3 words? Forget it. Anyway, I need to extract the information and filter myself, and then think about how to use it to help me activate the domain of origin. Things will not be very smooth. Fortunately, there is still time, and I don't have to worry about it from now on. Speaking of time, Hui looked up and told Yin Nuashing about the current distribution of combat power in the Void frontline. Yin Nuashing listened and thought for a moment. That's expected. The existence of the source law has broken the restrictions. As long as the path here is smooth and unobstructed, the warriors of order will be able to step on the platform and reach the sky in one step. They were originally the best in their own world. If it was not for the restrictions of the Void environment, they would have already reached the level of Yuanshi. Now that they have come to the Void frontline, where the environment conditions are better, it's not surprising that they have such results. When you guys have also advanced. No. When a considerable number of the higher-ups have also advanced, then you can tell them the news of the final battle. Final battle. Hui suddenly put on a serious expression. You want to wait until our higher-ups have all advanced into the realm of Yuanshi to tell them and raise their morale? There shouldn't be a need. You and I know our family's morale and people's hearts better than anyone else. If there's a problem, there'll be a problem early. No? Yin Washing shook her head and interrupted him. It's just an ordinary symbol of a node used to announce that the void frontline has entered the next stage. That's fine. We were also hesitating when to tell them about this. We scratched his head. It was a long time ago. He and Sui Feng had talked about this topic before. When should they tell them about the final battle? They were not sure. Just as they said at that time, the warriors of order were first and foremost individual lives. Then, as a warrior of order, they also had their own lives and things that they valued. The battle here was just for the same distant goal, and they should not get rid of everything for it. Announcing the arrival of the final battle was equivalent to informing them, giving them time to fulfill their wishes. When the day of the final battle arrived, they could go all out as much as possible. As Maple thought, the fact that the higher-ups had all advanced into the realm of Yuanshi was a symbol in itself. It meant that the Void frontline had already had the power to enter the next stage. In his opinion, it was a sign of encouragement and something like that. It was a sign, a declaration that they had the power and qualification to fight the underworld head-on. That kind of future was just around the corner. It was just that he suddenly felt a little sad. Perhaps he thought of the scene when the 20 advanced Yuanshi broke through the Void frontline. Perhaps he thought of the time when Maple decided to lie down for 100 billion years. Now, they had the power to fight the underworld head-on. It was the result of the long accumulation of 5 eras. It fulfilled their wish, but it made him feel a little sad. He was now looking forward to the future's ending, but he was also worried. Sigh. The thing called time flew by in a daze. It was unknown how much time had passed in the blink of an eye. Perhaps it knew that something was about to happen soon. This will urge them to keep moving forward, immersing themselves in it, and unable to extricate themselves. A period of time passed silently. They did not even look at the rules of time. When they looked back, they did not know what year or month it had been. Enduring and enduring, they were weakened. For some reason, it seemed to be far more exhausting than fighting. Waiting in the endless time and constantly moving forward was far more torturous than being immersed in fighting until one's scalp went numb. Phew, perhaps it was also torturous. The endless time exerted on them was eroding their souls bit by bit. Perhaps even numbness could not be described. What did they do during this period? The period was not clear. As they moved forward, they would eventually become numb. After all, they were not Maple, who could endure until he was half dead and still be resolute. Moving forward was Maple's route and what he was determined to do. He did not need motivation or vision for anything. He just wanted to move forward and needed to move forward. In the end, they couldn't close their eyes and pinch themselves to endure it. Fortunately, the observer space wasn't lonely and quiet. Occasionally, when they woke up, they would see Sui Feng and the others. They would also see him and Qing Jun fighting each other in the concept level space for some reason instead of fighting in the tower. From time to time, they would also see CU and Little Phoenix gathering together to talk about something. But whether it was a situation like a shift change or something else, when they woke up, they would see the fixed 3 people sitting together. The atmosphere was serene, as if the years were peaceful. Peaceful? Quiet my ass. What kind of atmosphere did you get to feel that the years were peaceful? Can't you just say peaceful to the void that's bombarding you outside? Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at him. 100 million years have passed. Have you gone stupid or confused? I think I'm stupid and confused. He put his head on the table and muttered, Isn't it because, I don't want to study anymore. Yin Nuashing glanced at him, fiddling with the colorful energy crystal that looked like a 3-dimensional hexagram in his hand. As he fiddled with it, he suddenly freed one of his hands and picked up a book from the surface of the 1-meter-high pile of books and casually flipped through it. You should be done with your things, right? It's been 100 million years. It's over. It's long over. The matter of the origin energy, the matter of the origin of the structure, and the matter of the primeval realm are all over. The rest of the time is just to figure out the essence. Oh, inspiration is such an illusory thing. When it comes knocking on the door, I'm confused. When I'm awake and open the door, it doesn't come. It's something that can only be found by chance. Everyone sighed, and Yin Nuashing was stunned. Well, I'm a little curious. He tilted his head and looked at everyone who was depressed. What are you guys thinking about when you're figuring out the essence? Xiao Shi, who was sitting next to him, was the first to answer. Magic circle, research. Siyu, who was resting her head on his shoulder, said in a daze, Oh, creation. Oh, structure. More creation. Wheeze, Xing LV, who had a chicken coop on his head, was obviously roasted by himself. I still can't hang myself up there and burn for a month. It's torturing me to death. Hui was even more distressed. I'm the one who's responsible for the defense of the whole field. What do you think I'm doing? Lord Green waved his hand and said, barging through the void. Everyone, from the beginning to the end, you didn't do anything other than barging through the void, right? Look at your spirit, and then look at the group of people who had been suffering for 100 million years. Oh, that's really hard work. Yin Nuashing responded dryly and turned the three-dimensional six-pointed star in his hand. After a while, his palm trembled slightly, and his eyes flickered slightly. He took out a world light ball from his stomach, looked at it for a while, and stuffed the six-pointed star into it. He looked at the thing in his hand for a few minutes, swallowed his saliva, and slowly adjusted the internal activities of the origin energy and the power of order, controlling them in detail. Although his expression was very serious, it was rare for everyone to gather together and talk about their own things for a long time, so no one noticed him at all, until he suddenly stood up with a pant sound and a long howl spread across the ice field. Wah! It's finally King done. Kill me. I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Everyone looked at the observer, who suddenly lay down straight on the ice field and was dumbfounded. This guy, is he really crazy? When Xiao Shi and Siyu dragged him back to the chair, he stood up again and suddenly threw the world light ball in his hand at Sui Feng. The ball coming at him startled Sui Feng. He caught it in a hurry and looked down at the ball in his hand. He was still stunned. What's this? Yin Nuashing lowered his head and let out a sinister laugh. After a while, he held his face with one hand and raised his head to let out a crazy laugh. Everyone shuddered and couldn't help but swallow their saliva and carefully moved back a distance. Ahem. After a while, Yin Nuashing calmed down and replied faintly to the bewildered crowd. The energy source world, the energy source, and the energy light ball are special among special, the special model of the fortress of origin domain. In an instant, there were only a few normal people left at the scene, looking at Sui Feng, Brother Lei, and the others who were dancing crazily, looking at Hui, who was strangling Qing Jun's neck with his arms until his face turned purple, looking at this group of demons who were dancing crazily. It was very crazy. Xiao Shi stared blankly at everyone who was in a daze. She pulled Ling and whispered in his ear, When did you finish it? Just now. Yin Nuashing put one hand on his waist and breathed a sigh of relief. It took a long time. Just dealing with the prerequisites was enough to torment me to death. Prerequisites. When Xiao Shi heard these words, her gray eyes flashed. Suddenly, she pulled him and whispered seriously, Have a baby. Yin Nuashing. Why did this girl think of this? Ahem. Stop fooling around. He raised his hand and knocked on the girl's head. Then he stood up and said to Sui Feng and the others who were still screaming, Hurry up and install the thing and see how it goes. In the name of origin and primordial, this thing that gathers 146 origins and converts 90% of the origin energy level is still not enough. I can only be the core myself. The scene suddenly froze. All the inheritors stared at him with their eyes wide open. They were even more dumbfounded than before. Hui stared at him with his eyes wide open. How did you convert all 90%? Weren't you dealing with the origin domain? Because I couldn't find the knack for the origin domain, and I couldn't open the door and the wall together. So I had to turn around and continue to work on the prerequisites. Yin Nuashing spread his hands and sighed helplessly. In the end, I still couldn't find the knack. Like I said, the origin domain is a little unreliable. I can only treat it as a surprise. Now, the situation is clear. Either the surprise doesn't want to open the door, or it wants to shut the door in my face. Everyone was speechless. They didn't know if it was good news or bad news. All 146 origins had reached 90%, but they still couldn't touch the origin domain. Well, under normal circumstances, the exploration of the origin domain would only officially start when one reached 90%. But from the looks of it, it was obvious that he couldn't figure it out even with all the prerequisites. So he cursed and pulled the rest of the prerequisites to the passing line, and then continued to curse and bang on the door. But this guy was really scary. It was understandable that the little angel had reached the higher tier. After all, she had been sticking close to him. Shuang Shuang was an origin life form, which was already ridiculous. So he was mentally prepared. As for the observer, well, he had never tried anything that wasn't ridiculous from the beginning. After 100 million years, all the origins had suddenly reached the threshold of the peak of primordial. It was not unacceptable. Yes, acceptable. He covered his right side of his conscience to express his acceptance. Accept my ass. Bloody hell, this is so exciting. Think about it. Are all the inheritors still stuck at the 60% threshold? Don't you guys keep making big news? Chapter 2066. There was a type of person who usually kept a low profile and seemed harmless to humans and animals. However, when no one expected it, they would suddenly jump out and exceed everyone's expectations. Usually, this was called acting like a pig. I'll pretend to be your Chue. Is that what I want to pretend to be? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at Hui. I was forced, okay? You think I didn't want to break through? Can't you say something like take a different path or build up your foundation? Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. After a period of time without a word, and seeing that your 146 origin energies have been converted to 90%, isn't that? Ahem. That's what it means. But you can't play that. Hui scratched his head and mumbled, when you were causing trouble back then, there were no ghosts or gods within a radius of 10 million miles. Only a small portion of the divine realm active on the battlefield would not run when they saw you. And that small portion would usually be the newbies who don't know who you are. It's a walking disaster. The light of truth of order would eliminate all trouble, provided you show it on the surface and not hide it. Yin Nuashing put her palms together and said calmly, instead of letting others come looking for trouble, it's better to tear down the house and root out the trouble in the cradle. It's boring and time-consuming to be troubled, and it's easy to trigger my mania over time. For the sake of my physical and mental health, it's better for the trouble to disperse. It's much more fun to let others tag me with 10 million dangerous tags than them charging at me head-on. So, little Fong, how's it going? Hui and the others laughed dryly. The trouble was dispersed with a disaster-level storm. Sui Feng shuddered, and his hand, that was pushing the space, trembled slightly. Brother Feng, don't be like that. I'm getting goosebumps. Fortress of Origin, between the core of the domain, everyone stuck their heads out and looked at Sui Feng as he tore open the space where the core was placed layer by layer. After spending a tremendous amount of effort, he finally dug out the true location of the core. Sui Feng held the sphere with both hands and stood in front of the shell made of chains. He looked at the empty space in front of him and gulped. He took a deep breath and threw the sphere forward. Seeing the energy source world floating forward, he couldn't help but put his hands together and murmured, "Success, success, success, success." Even if you recite it 10,000 times, it will still fail. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes, waved her hand, and said, "Let's see if it works first. If it doesn't, I still have 2 or 3 backup plans. Don't worry, although the backup plan may take longer." See, you looked at him curiously. How long will it take? Oh, 100 billion years. Everyone was left speechless. Wasn't that the same as directly assimilating oneself as a material before running to the spiritual temple to hang for 100 billion years? Is that how you do things? Sui Feng raised his head with a bitter expression. He watched as the energy source world floated to the center of the core frame and rapidly expanded to fill the entire space. He stared at it with his eyes wide open. Everyone held their breaths as they stared at the colorful energy source world. They waited for a full minute. Just when they thought that the energy source world they had spent so much effort to create was still not up to standard, a slight energy vibration suddenly reverberated throughout the entire space. The shell piled up by chains was also dyed with a multicolored light bit by bit. The brilliant light suddenly burst out from the core, drowning everyone in a sea of light amidst a burst of astonishment. The fortress of origin, which had been silent for countless years, suddenly trembled. Countless patterns appeared on its surface, and immeasurable energy gathered in the void and nothingness, smashing through the spatial barrier of the observer space and pouring in. Then, it crashed into the conch-like structure and was absorbed by the patterns on its body. The huge suction force released by the fortress of origin even caused the sea of energy below to churn. If it had not been restrained by yin nuashing, it might have used the sea of energy as well. The gathering of energy lasted for a full 2 minutes. Suddenly, an energy halo visible to the naked eye burst out from the fortress of origin, disappearing into the depths of the observer space in an instant. At the same time, the power of order descended from the sky, covering the whole observer space. The sea of energy also went berserk in an instant, spurting out huge pillars of water like a fountain. Under the influence of the restless sea of energy, the stable energy between heaven and earth turned into a storm that roared and rushed in all directions, gradually evolving into energy storms of different sizes that wreaked havoc on the sea. The sudden surge of wind and clouds stunned everyone. They had thought that the Fortress of Origin's domain would change the observer space when it was unfurled, but this huge change was beyond their expectations. They could not react in time. After all, it was their first time seeing the Fortress of Origin's domain unfurled. Yun Nuashing conjured a large umbrella to cover everyone under it, blocking the seawater that was falling from the sky. She looked at the huge conch in front of them, and then at the sea of energy that rose tens of thousands of miles into the sky. When the Fortress of Origin's domain unfurls, it forcibly occupies the environment and immediately reconstructs itself. This is a much bigger movement than the Temple of Origin. It seems that the domain will only stop after the concentration of energy in the domain reaches a balance. The energy will be raised to the level of the domain and then spread throughout the entire space. Damn, fighting in the order domain is like fighting in a pool of energy. The energy is inexhaustible, and the recovery speed is also forcibly increased to the same level as the domain's recovery speed. Even a high-tier primogenitor would not be able to squeeze himself dry even if he poured his energy on the enemy. It seems that it can also help pour energy and increase the intensity of the fire. Sui Feng and the others nodded. So that's how it is. Yin Nuashing. So why don't you know? You used the Fortress of Origin before, didn't you? We do know that it's very powerful during the battle, but at that time there were too many creations, and there were dozens of creations placed in each node, so we couldn't tell which creations were responsible for the impact for a while. Sui Feng scratched his head and forced a smile. Now it seems that the Fortress of Origin's domain has the biggest effect. A lot of creations. Yin Nuashing glanced at them helplessly and continued. Although it's called balance, it doesn't seem to affect things with a higher energy level than the domain. To put it bluntly, it's just making up for and improving things. There's no need to reduce the power of a certain aspect or a certain thing to achieve balance. We looked at this side of the space in confusion. How did you come to this conclusion? Look, the Staff of Origin and the Staff of Creation over there are still normal. They're not affected at all. Then, everyone nodded. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment and looked at Sui Feng and the others. How is the domain compared to when you guys used it? Sui Feng shrugged. Naturally, it's more powerful than when we used it, but the current state of the domain isn't that much different. Compared to when we used it, it's probably only about 10% weaker. Ahem. Sui Feng coughed and squinted at his sister. Sis, You're talking about the normal fortress of origin. The one before us is specially made. It's at least 40% weaker. After all, it's specially made by the gods. Being restricted by the core, we can't find a way to make up for it. Sai, you're thinking too much. It's fine as long as it can be used. It's not worth it. Yin Nuoxing raised her hand and gestured to the others. There are ways to make up for it. Although it's basically impossible for me to make up for 40% of the difference, I should be able to make it 20 to 30% higher. At least 20%. Based on the current level of the domain, 20% is not a small number. It should be worth a try. Wait a minute, Everyone turned pale with fright. Shut up. But he couldn't hear them. He had been wrapped into a cocoon by the little angel and forced to calm down. After a few minutes, Yin Nuoxing calmed down as she plucked the feathers on her head. Let's put the staff of creation back. Hui Ji was feeling the changes in his domain. He tilted his head and looked at Sui Feng. You're not going to use the staff of creation anymore? I've done what I should do. What I can't do is that I can't do anything from the beginning to the end. Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief. She opened her umbrella and led everyone to the staff of creation. Then, she carried it towards the fortress of origins. I've already put 7 energy source worlds in it. It should be enough. There's nothing I can do if it's not enough. 7 is the limit. It's different from the energy source worlds in the fortress of origins. They're special. They've borrowed from the first generation's creation core to strengthen the domain and energy attributes, although it's just a little bit. I've studied the second generation's creation core for hundreds of thousands of years, but I still couldn't find the way to strengthen my attacks. I'm tired. Let's just throw it aside. So, I've stuffed 7 energy source worlds that are 1 level lower than the domain core. Hui Ji took a deep breath. You didn't want to use the second generation's creation core to strengthen the staff of creation, did you? Yes. The energy source worlds created by the second generation's creation core should be able to increase the attack power of the objects it drives. Yin Nuoxing crossed her arms. But failed. It's a pity. I used the first generation's energy source worlds to speed up the charging of the staff of creation. That's it for now. Everyone was speechless. Is this guy crazy? Does he still want to increase the attack power of the staff of creation? The staff of creation was at home. It was a space covered by the sacred sigil of destruction. From the outside, it looked like a horizontal well. However, they did not expect the gravity to change direction after they jumped in. They fell vertically as if they had jumped into a vertical well. It was probably as deep as 20,000 feet. The walls and the bottom of the well were covered with dense, sacred sigil of destruction. The red and black light kept flashing, and a strong aura of destruction lingered at the bottom of the well, covering the entire space at the bottom of the well. Everyone felt numb from their toes to the top of their heads. Being surrounded by such a strong aura of destruction, they felt as if death was choking them. It was as if they would be reduced to ashes if there was a flash of light here. However, there's also a very contradictory and unusual feeling of intimacy in their minds. It was reassuring. No, they really could not calm down. Staying here was like sitting on pins and needles. Their whole body was resisting this place. If they could, they would have fled as fast as they could. The aura of destruction here was too frightening. However, there was one person who was an exception. Yin Nuoxing touched the sacred sigil of destruction, and the sacred sigil branded on his forehead involuntarily popped out. He suddenly looked very relaxed, and his tone changed. There was a hint of comfort in his voice. The atmosphere here is good. It's really relaxing. Everyone was speechless. If they did not know that the two of them were family, they would have thought that he was seriously ill. At the center of the bottom of the well, there was an unidentified reddish-black object. It looked like a composite structure. There were 3 huge rings on the periphery. They were translucent, and they could see that the inside of the translucent ring was engraved with dense, reddish-black patterns. The 3 rings were not fixed. Although there were always some places attached to each other, they did not interfere with each other. At this time, they were slowly rotating in a very slow and unsynchronized manner. In the center of the structure was a huge, reddish-black sphere. There were 6 three-dimensional stars in the 6 directions of the sphere. The 7 objects in the center were connected to each other by energy threads. They were translucent like the 3 rings, and they were stuffed with more incomprehensible but shocking patterns. This thing was not like an energy creation because it did not seem to have a physical body, but their senses told them that it should be a creation. Xiaoshi looked at the structure for a while. Suddenly, her pretty face changed slightly. She exclaimed softly, "This is the magic circle of the god of destruction." "This thing is also a magic circle?" Hui was surprised. "The 3 rings outside are also part of the magic circle?" Xiaoshi nodded slightly. "There can't be a mistake. But the god of destruction rarely uses this part of his power. I only have a vague impression of it because my teacher took me to see it." Hui's face twitched. The heavenly gods of origin are indeed very obsessed with circles. Why are there 3 circles here? I've seen a few 3-dimensional spell formations before, and they're all connected together. Why are there 3 independent circles here? I'm not sure about that. Xiaoshi shook her head. After all, they are gods. Maybe there's a deeper meaning that we can't understand for now. I have seen the strangest magic circle, and it was also cast by a god. If I remember correctly, that magic circle is in the shape of a fist. It seems to be used to raise the magic circle and smash it. It is a rare non-energy attack, magic circle. Everyone was speechless. Well, now wasn't the time to talk about the strange appearance of the magic circle. Their attention should be on the ball trap and the starlight circle in front of them. Because this place was too strange, not many people would come here. That was why after so many years of rebuilding the Fortress of Origin, they only found out that there was something hidden here. Since it was left by the god of destruction, it was probably a magic circle used to support the staff of creation. It was definitely used to maximize the attack. Even if they did not understand it, they could be sure of that. That was the only thing they could not be wrong about. It was like a certain person who kept talking about maximizing the attack. Speaking of which, that person did not say anything since the beginning. Noticing that a certain observer was silent, everyone turned to look at him. The former was staring at the circle and circle in front of him with his eyes wide open. The destruction rune on his forehead was gradually expanding, emitting a reddish-black light that was flickering at the same frequency as the light in this space. The origin energy on his body was also surging with the flickering light. Judging from his appearance, he was not responding to the call to be summoned to the continent of origin. Instead, he should be suddenly activating something. When the switch was pressed, it was either a firework or an even bigger firework. Hui gulped, intending to interrupt his best friend before he could do anything. Foam! Yin Nuoxing blinked her eyes, and the surging energy in her body shrank back bit by bit. After a while, she came back to her senses. She suddenly pulled Little Hour and pointed at the circle with one hand. Her beautiful eyes shone brightly as she looked at her. "Little Hour, I want that." Everyone was speechless. Can you not say that with such a cute expression like a child who has taken a fancy to something? Don't you know that your persona has fallen apart? Your moral integrity is all over the floor. Hui was sweating profusely. He patted Yin Nuoxing on the shoulder. "Do you understand what that is for?" Yin Nuoxing smiled brightly. "Of course it's a good thing. You can put extra large firework. I understand. You don't have to say anymore." Hui's forehead was sweating even more. He smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "But why can't you feel it when you understand it?" Yin Nuoxing shrugged and said, "The proper name for a 3-dimensional magic circle is magic circle structure. The structure system is completely different from a normal magic circle. It is not the same thing at all. Furthermore, I have never learned this thing before. I have to figure it out myself. I don't even have a guidebook to figure it out blindly. I don't know how many years it will take me to figure it out. Although I still have time now, it is not to be wasted." Xiaoshi nodded slightly. "I plan to do so. The timing is just right." Yin Nuoxing smiled even more happily. "Then let's quickly put the staff of creation back together." Hui's cheeks twitched for a while. Look at his happy face, he's like a child. I haven't seen such an innocent and relaxed smile in a long time. It would be even better if he didn't only show it when he saw the extra-large fireworks. The staff of creation was divided into two parts. One was its base, and the other was the body. The base was used to help gather energy. Unexpectedly, the base was placed at the bottom of the well. After it was put back, there was only a low wall 1 meter above the ground. The staff of creation was suspended a distance away from the ground. Between the two of them was the circle of the god of destruction. It seemed that it was indeed used to assist and attack. Well, it should be a good thing, right? Probably. It was not easy to tell. When it was just the staff of creation, Maple already said that he could not bear to use it. Now, with the addition of the god of destruction's circle structure, it would be even more difficult to withstand. No wonder Maple pointed at that thing and said that he wanted to take it. Apart from the fact that he was interested in the more powerful firework, he probably also knew that he had to solve this circle before he could use the staff of creation. Sigh, so many twists and turns. He did not expect this thing to be so troublesome. Speaking of which, they tore apart the fortress of origin, but did not take away the staff of creation. Was it because they knew that they could not twist it into something that could be operated by the energy of chaos? Nor could they use the origin creations to power the two items, so they could only destroy them? And because they were not strong enough, they could not turn it into ashes and could only dismantle it safely. Suifeng had played with the staff of creation before, so it did not take much effort to put it back. The whole process could be simplified as aim, move twice, click, and it was done. The only big change was that after the staff of creation was put back in place, the energy in the entire shaft moved a little. Countless runes of destruction lit up with the brightest light, and this time, after the light reached its peak, it no longer weakened. A vast wave of destructive energy surged wildly at the bottom of the shaft, gathering on the circle and the staff of origin, causing everyone to sweat profusely. Just as they thought that the staff of creation was charging and were about to run, the energy surging in the shaft suddenly weakened. Just as they were about to breathe a sigh of relief, they caught a glimpse of the red-black light surging again from the corner of their eyes, as if a star was being born. They were stunned and turned their heads. A certain observer was pulling his hair with a gloomy face. The energy of origin in his body was surging uncontrollably, and the dazzling red-black light was shining from his body. Yin Nuoxing looked down worriedly at himself, which was flashing in the red-black light, and sighed. Can you not treat me as a waste energy storage? I can recycle it, but forget it, I'll just recycle it. Everyone covered their mouths and tried to suppress their expressions. The creation of origin would feel that something was missing if it did not torment him once. They all had the same feeling now. They thought that the fortress of origin did not torment him because there was nowhere to do it, but they did not expect that it was waiting here. It's done. Fortunately, I've mentioned it to my teacher before, and he knows how to put it back together. Suifeng wiped the sweat off his forehead as he descended from the air. He looked at Maple, who was slowly withdrawing his energy, and pointed at the staff of creation hanging above his head. Maple, do you want to give it a try? I don't think so. Yin Nuoxing threw the energy bit by bit into the divine vessel, and looked at everyone and shook his head. I've known about them after tormenting them for so many years. I don't think there's a need to try. It's still quite difficult for me to use it in my current state, but it should be easier when I'm at my peak. By the way, I suddenly remembered something when I saw this scene. He patted Suifeng's shoulder and told them about the image he saw with Frost and the little angel, and the thing stored at the bottom of the continent of origin. What do you think it is? That thing at the bottom of the continent of origin. Suifeng's face was very solemn, and he even pinched his face to express his surprise. I never thought that they would sneak to that place. You know what it is? Well, I know a little, but I don't know the details. Suifeng took a deep breath and nodded at Maple, the solemnity on his face fading bit by bit. I'm not the only one who knows. The others know too. What? You don't know? Before he could finish his sentence, Sui Qing and Xiao Xiao shook their heads vigorously. However, Brother Lei nodded and said, I know a little about it. My teacher brought me there before. I think he said, oh, it's some kind of seal. We became excited at once. The seal of the chaos concept body? No. There's no way they would put the chaos concept body under their own home to seal it, right? Brother Lay smiled bitterly and waved his hand. And there's no presence of the chaos concept body inside that thing, only the power left by the gods. But when it comes to seals, Yin Nuashing tilted her head and tugged at her long hair. Only the chaos concept body would need to be sealed, right? The suppression on them had yet to begin, or they wouldn't have sneaked into the continent of origin when the heavenly god of origin and the others weren't there. I think that the thing that they risked their lives to break into that place really has something to do with the chaos concept body. At the very least, it's something used to guard the void of order. Since it was in their way, they had to destroy it then, but they didn't expect that the heavenly god of origin and the others had already taken it away. I'm not too sure about that. I've almost forgotten about it, and my teacher only brought me there on a whim because he had nothing better to do. Brother Lay raised his head slightly and thought. I do remember that it was a fist-sized energy crystal on the table. It was roughly a dodecahedron, with a strange rune engraved on each side. It wasn't the original divine language, nor was it the divine pattern of any of the gods. I don't remember much about it, and as for what it's used for, well, that's probably it. Sui Foam shrugged. I agree with you, Brother Foam. Her eminences have never changed their ways. It was a very pure idea and reason, just like the obsession they had left behind. The short 8 words encompassed the ultimate goal of everything they had done over the past 300 years, and was also the reason why Sui Foam was so certain that it had something to do with the chaos. However, too much time had passed, and there was no way to delve deeper into it. The topic could only be put aside for now, and there was no way to achieve anything by delving deeper into it. Yin Nuashing clapped his hands to wake everyone up. He looked around and said, Are you done with the things here? Is there anything else? Huey's expression visibly withered, and he rolled his eyes. No, that's it. Let's go back and work on the essence of the origin energy. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself sooner or later. If there's nothing else to do then. Yin Nuashing turned to look at Little Hour and drag her out of the fortress of origin when she saw her looking over. Then we'll go first. Hui was stunned for a while and scratched his head with a weird expression. Are those two in a hurry to have a baby? Everyone was speechless. It was fortunate that a certain observer had run quickly, or he would have been tied to the muzzle of the staff of creation and executed. Chapter 2067. The light of teleportation flickered, and the landing point was now fixed in front of the big conch house. When they were done with work, idle, or crazy, they would gather at this place. Although they had watched the snowy tundra for 100 million years, it was not to the extent that they would get tired of it. For them, there was not much time to idle. They would get up for a walk or two to relax, and then they would enter the next phase of work. It was just like sitting for a long time and drinking a cup of tea. After drinking it, they would have to sit down again. After sitting for a long time, they did not have much time to look at the tundra, so they would not get tired of looking at it for too long. As soon as they slipped out of the portal, they saw a large pile of purple gold awls covering the tundra space before them. Xiao Xiao and Maple were sitting on chairs facing each other. The former was teaching the latter about magic circles and constructs. There was no such thing as poking one's forehead and slapping something on one's forehead. It was not the same as when they were little kids. Poking one's forehead and slapping something on one's forehead would complete learning. Poking one's head would at most give the information in one breath. It was irresponsible to throw things into another's head without organizing them. Sometimes, it was not as convenient as oral communication. Moreover, they had reached the level of analyzing the root of the structure and delving into its essence. Everything needed a long time to settle down, and there was no way to speed things up. Even Frost, who was the fastest among them, took hundreds of years to do it. The purple gold magic circle before them was not just pieces of alls. It spread out across the vast tundra, entangling into a painting in the air. It was as if a mountain range was built, covered in purple gold plants. The scale was huge. compared to Maple's hundreds of millions of magic circles that were so densely packed and suffocating. The painting cast by the magic circle before them was more continuous and magnificent. Still, there was a restless aura of energy turbulence hidden under the beauty. It felt as if a random step or two would trigger some inexplicable trap and be hit in the face by a torrent of energy. Xiao Xiao raised his right hand to Maple. A purple gold cube the size of a palm was floating above his palm. The cube seemed to be a framework woven by threads of energy, and its interior was densely packed. If one were to put their eyes on it, they would see that there were many runes that were a little smaller than pores. It was so stuffed that it looked like scribbles, just like the door-sized book of Her Eminence. The cube was the source of the continuous scene cast by the magic circle. Since it was too difficult to understand and too brain-burning, he decided to turn his eyes away after a glance and not torment his brain. Maple, on the other hand, was listening to Xiao Zhao's explanation with great interest. It had been a long time since Maple showed such a joyful expression when he touched something new and interesting. Previously, when Maple encountered the origin energy and the chaos energy, he would pinch his nose and pinch his chest as if he was half dead. The pain of his soul was beyond words, and it was especially painful to watch. He walked over casually. Seeing that Xiao Zhao's explanation seemed to have ended, he bumped Maple's arm with his shoulder. "How's it going?" Yin Nuoxing raised his head slightly and glanced at the scene cast by the purple gold magic circle. He rubbed his eyes and said, "It's okay. Things of the origin system are more or less similar and connected. In my case, although it's a new thing, it's already an incomplete foundation. Now, as long as I tidy up and straighten out my thoughts, I should be able to do it." Things of the origin system were more or less similar to their roots and essence. In his case, except for the power of Luo Zun God, the other things should not be too difficult since he had converted 90% of his roots. He just needed to put in more effort and spend more time. This was the incomplete foundation. In fact, it was not that Luo Zun God's power did not exist. The 49 types of origin energy that he had adjusted also had Luo Zun God's power, but it was still in an incomplete state. Now that he was busy with the normal 146 types of origin energy, he could only throw the adjusted ones aside and ignore them for the time being. The essence of the magic circle structure was more like a non-physical energy creation woven by magic circles. It was a large-scale magic circle. Compared to the hundreds of millions of magic circles that he had thrown out in the past, the former had an additional important core. However, it was different from the normal energy creation's structural source and core. What he needed to straighten out now were these two different cores. He had to temporarily slap himself to make himself forget about the energy creation's core and structural source. Then, he had to redifferentiate the core of the magic circle structure. If he did not do it well, it would take a lot of effort. Xiao Xiao had already explained the basic situation to him. The next thing he had to do was to fall into an endless state of thinking. He had to figure out the existing conditions bit by bit like a puzzle. Sometimes, he even had to try to understand the specific situation. It was not particularly troublesome. Among all the things he had to deal with regarding the origin of things, the difficulty of acquiring the magic circle construct was only one of the lowest. After all, what he had acquired was a new type of thing, a new magic circle form. It was just the beginning of the basics, and it was not as difficult as the high-level and deadly origin creations. He felt that he could get it done in a few days. Seeing that Ling had started to practice, Xiao Xiao observed with interest. His movements were stiff and awkward, as if he was trying to force himself to change his habits. It reminded her of the beginning, when she had fumbled around clumsily like him, carefully pushing forward. Every step she took was very slow, as if she was afraid of making a mistake. When she saw that Ling's eyes were gradually lost in thought, and he was slowly entering the zone, she dispersed the formation she had set up and retreated to the side. Hui, who had moved to another table, saw Xiao Xiao coming over and asked curiously, How is it? How is it? Is it going well? Don't worry about me." Xiao Xiao nodded calmly and sat down next to Qing Qing. She took a sip of tea and looked up at Ling, who was struggling with the first step. With the foundation of the origin energy, it may not take long for him to master it smoothly. After that, he just needs to practice more. We glanced at Maple, who was concentrating. He also did not understand the specific situation. So, when he is proficient, he can touch the magic circle of her eminence. That will have to be done in a special way. After all, it is the magic circle of her eminence. It is not an ordinary thing. Xiao Xiao shook her head calmly. Also, even if he is proficient in the magic circle, it will take a lot of effort to change the form. In other words, Maple was now just trying to get started. Getting started, practicing, and advancing. When he was almost at the right level, he could then deal with that special thing. After that, he would have to change a lot of things that he often used. It sounded like a brain burner. Fortunately, he did not play with magic circles. His eminence did not use magic circles. Otherwise, he would be sitting there in a daze like Maple. Come to think of it, Hui suddenly remembered something. Three-dimensional. No, what was it again? Magic circle construct. Is it standard not too high? I think I have seen someone use a magic circle to manifest a three-dimensional pattern a long time ago. What you're talking about is just the energy released by the magic circle to manifest its characteristics. Magic circle construct is only mastered by her eminence. Moreover, only the realm of the gods has magic circles. Other worlds that are derived from the void are just another kind of similar thing. Xiao Xiao looked at him and calmly replied. Making the energy of the magic circle manifest its characteristics is mostly due to lack of practice. If you exclude this reason, then the only explanation is that he is showing off his skill. Ling's magic circle's energy is restrained, and the attacks it releases are almost all energy torrents. Only when the attack hits and explodes will it manifest part of its characteristics due to the release of all the energy, but it will not draw out a complete pattern of its characteristics. We thought about it, and it seemed to be true. Maple's magic circle did not have anything more than a very bright magic circle. Most of the attacks it released were simple and unadorned. Yeah, why is that? Everyone looked at him speechlessly and said in unison, "Restrain the energy and attack at full power." Hui laughed dryly and shrunk his neck. His brain was temporarily damaged, and his train of thought was blocked. Shuang Shuang put a 1-foot-tall ice sculpture of Little Star on the table. She looked at Little Star, who was immersed in the state of learning new things, and suddenly said, when Little Star comes out of her isolation, everyone turned to look at her. She gently pinched the new ice sculpture, and her eyes flashed. The magic circle at the front line may undergo a huge transformation. Everyone thought, that is also very possible. Bah, it is definitely something that will happen. That guy will not hesitate to use more effort to increase the intensity of his attacks. Once he has mastered this new form of magic circle and understood the magic circle of her eminence, he will definitely make a move on the magic circle at the front line. No, it shouldn't be. Little Hour gave a negative answer when everyone thought so. This form of magic circle is much more powerful than its initial form and requires more energy and control. However, it is not a problem for Ling. If all the magic circles at the front line of the void were to change form, the order domain of the Temple of Origins alone would not be able to withstand such a level of energy expenditure. Moreover, the front line is already in a state of balance and stability. Unless the underworld sends out more powerful forces, there is no need to spend effort to further increase the power of the order domain. Everyone thought about it and said, "Oh, that was true." The power of the order domain at the front line was already a notch above the cannon fodder thrown out by the underworld. If it were to be increased, the warriors guarding the order domain would have to carry the domain to the abyssal death mist rift and block the door. Little Hour's eyes flashed for a moment. However, he would probably make adjustments to the original third defense line's magic circle. Everyone nodded with all their might. This time, he would definitely do it. In short, if there was something more powerful, he would definitely complete the adjustment and installation as soon as possible. He wouldn't stop until he had thrown out 10 billion copies. This was a rare opportunity to refresh the upper and lower limits of the lower and lower limits. Let's put aside that guy who was breaking through the upper and lower limits and let him figure out himself. After all, they could not help him, and they had their own things to do. Actually, only a few of them appear to be very busy and exhausted. For example, he and Little Hour were both thinking about how to explore more powerful defensive magic circles and magic circles. Generally speaking, there was no end to this, so they could not stop. As for the others, Green had gone to the tower to fight. It was said that he planned to challenge his Lord Maple's source form to a one-on-one battle. Hopefully, this iron-headed kid would not drown in the torrent of source form. 100 million years had passed, and they did not know to what extent the observer of source form had grasped the source form's power. In any case, it was definitely not stagnant. The other second-generation inheritors had also followed him to the tower to fight. Xing LV was still propping himself up on a pile of firewood, and the fire was so strong that the aroma of barbecued meat wafted out. The siblings, Sui Feng and Sui Qing, were staring at each other, their blue eyes flashing with starlight. No one knew what they were doing. Dao Heaven was making ice sculptures and figurines with Shuang Shuang. They heard that Shuang Shuang was planning to change the shape of the derivative formed by her psychic energy, and no one knew if there was any deeper meaning behind it. That girl, Ji Shuiyin, kept staring at Maple as she fiddled with the magic circles. They did not know why this girl would have an unclear obsession with someone she had forgotten. It was very mysterious, but she could not explain it herself, so they could only suppress their curiosity. Although everyone had reached the stage where they were supposed to wait for time to pass, it didn't mean that they had nothing to do. Anyway, they were all busy as usual. For the time being, they didn't have to care about the time or think too much about it. In short, they just had to keep moving forward. This time, everyone maintained a sober state. Even if time passed for a long time, it wouldn't be too boring. Since Maple wasn't here, let him say it. Let the time here fall into a frenzied vortex and fly by quickly. Then struggle with all your might. Even if it would be meaningless, time slowly fell in the vibration of minutes and seconds. It was said that if one calmed down for a long time, one could hear the sound of time passing. But he felt that this was a lie because he had never heard it at all. Of course, it might also be because he hadn't really calmed down. His mind and soul had always been in a state of restlessness. He couldn't possibly say, well, actually I'm very calm to himself. That was simply a lie. It was just like how Hui and the others thought that he would never rest and would only torture himself to death. The more tired he was, the harder he would torture himself. The harder he was, the more tired he would be. Gradually, he would torture himself to death. He felt that it was very necessary for him to make a statement. He didn't die from overwork. At most, he had fainted many times. Well, this long period of time had passed, and they had been in a very normal activity. There was no change. Those who were rushing through the void had been rushing, and those who were causing trouble would occasionally take a break and come over to chat and drink tea. As for him, he seemed to have been forced to calm down a little more during this period of time. But the problem was not particularly big. He just had to endure for a while more, just a while. It would be soon, really soon. Damn it, soon. Do you know how many times I have heard you say soon over the years? Hui rolled his eyes at him, poking his face with his hand and scolding. There's a limit to what you can do. You have to admit that even if you are an energy life form, even if you're a creation of Yuan Chu, there's a limit. The limit is used to remind you that if you continue to persist, you will either die or be injured. Why are you so stubborn? Yin Nuoxing's face was indifferent as he tilted his head and dodged his finger. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. Soon. Hui narrowed his eyes and stared at him, looking at him, who was so transparent that he was about to become one with the space, the energy particles manifesting and floating in his transparent body, and the snowflakes passing through his body. Hui could not help but grit his teeth. Are you going to die soon? That will be soon too. Yin Nuoxing nodded indifferently and admitted. Huey's face twitched twice as he rolled his eyes and sighed. This guy, his energy body had already collapsed, and he was now in a pure energy state. His body did not exist, and his body was just a mass of energy swaying around like a ghost. He had endured to this extent, and yet he still did not let go of himself. Speaking of which, you have endured for 6 eras, right? To be precise, it has been 5.5 eras. Yun Nuashing tilted his head and saw Huey's gloomy appearance, sighing one breath after another. He also felt very helpless. To force Hui into such a state, it seemed that his current state had reached a level that made them tremble in fear. However, there was still a while, and then, well, he did not know how long it would take. In the concept-level space, the energy storm raged, and energy particles of various colors floated between heaven and earth. The 5-colored energy particles and the crimson and pink energy particles floated and circled together, passing by them. He stretched out his hand and released a weak suction force from his palm, pulling the energy particles into his palm and rubbing them between his fingers. In his line of sight, on the left and right of the ice field, there were 2 energy storms that were not particularly large in scale. The 5-colored energy storm on the left was caused by Siyu, and the flame storm on the right was caused by Qinghuang. These 2 storms were tossing and turning, and Shuang, who was sitting on the ring of frost descent, could not bear it. She could only carefully separate the 2 storms and did not dare to exert full force to suppress them. Throw a shield up there. Shuang is trapped and can't use her power. Yin Nuashing raised her hand and patted Huey's shoulder. These 2 girls are also very interesting. They actually broke through at the same time. How could the timing be so perfect? Hui groaned, took out a shield, and threw it to Shuang to help her share some of the pressure. Did you carefully adjust it? Adjust what? It's just a matter of time. Siyu is actually slower by about a month, but the 2 of them just happened to cause the final impact at the same time. Well, I didn't expect that the 2 of them could cause such a strong impact. The feeling that the 2 girls gave me when they broke through without making any noise made me think that the others would also break through without making any noise. Now it seems that it should be due to the influence of the source energy. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Since the last time Siyu and Qing Huang broke through the seal together, she knew that the 2 girls would break through at the same time next time. A lot of time had passed in the blink of an eye. Sigh, I feel weird. Hui mumbled and scratched his head. We should be faster. Why are these 2 girls the first to reach the higher level? Is it really because you were next to them for too long? That caused the seal to be worn down for a long time? That's why the 2 girls caught up. That's one reason. The other reason is because it's just right. Yin Nuashing gently stroked the wings of the little angel who was sleeping on her shoulder. Siyu and Qing Huang went from the middle level of the premier to the top level after the seal dissipated this time. This time, they'll be blocked by the seal when they break through to the higher level. As for you guys, after the seal was lifted this time, you can still go a few more steps forward. It's actually almost the same as before and after, just half of the seal's time difference. In the end, you guys are still a little ahead. So how long will the seal last this time? Hui was gnawing on the plate with a gloomy face. Hearing this, he put the plate on the table, closed his eyes, and looked at it for a while. A few more years, not too long. Sigh, I didn't expect the seal to be so long. Half an era will pass just like that. Yin Nuashing glanced at him while drinking tea, and then turned to look at the 2 energy storms in the sky. At the beginning of the 57th era, the Void Frontline was about to welcome the 2nd and 3rd premier. At the same time, it was also a sign that the Void Frontline was about to enter another stage, a node. The higher-ups would step into the higher level one by one in the following time, and the whole stage should last for tens of thousands of years. Half an era's seal. Hui counted with his fingers. If the time is just right, we will get through 2 more rounds of the seal, and it will be the 58th era. Then, we can take 2 more steps forward. Do you think we can reach the 8th level of heaven by then? I hope so, but I'm not sure about the actual situation. Yin Nuashing shrugged, and her hand that was stroking the wings paused slightly. But this girl should be able to... Ming? Ah, yes. She is about to break the seal. She has been sticking to you longer than anyone else. I guess you will break the seal before us this time. Hui sighed as he spoke. He looked at the little angel and Maple who were sticking together. He glanced at the former who had fallen asleep and could not help but say, "Why did she fall asleep again during this time? Now, it seems that only her instinct to stick to you is still in effect. Is she not in charge of anything else?" Yin Nuoxing looked at Hui helplessly. She patted the girl's head and sighed. "One is to prevent me from suddenly disappearing. After all, I look like this." Hui rolled his eyes. "Since you know that you look like this, why don't you go back to the factory for a round of major repairs? Hold on for a while longer. Soon, it's really soon. Cough, cough. There's another reason." Yin Nuoxing bitterly smiled after being looked at by Hui with a disgusted expression for a while. He narrowed one of his eyes and muttered, "Her seal has actually been broken." "Hui, what? You can't change the result no matter how loud you shout." Seeing Hui jumping up and somersaulting on the ice, Yin Nuoxing's face twitched. She shrugged and said, "Since a quarter of an era ago, this girl has been in a state of half-fusion with my soul to prevent me from suddenly disappearing. So the seal. You know. Huey's mouth trembled for a while. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Then he picked up the chair and looked at the little angel with reluctance and helplessness. He could not help but sigh. "Sigh, you are better than me. I have been sitting with you all the time. Why does the effect seem to be worse? How can the fusion of souls be the same?" Yin Nuoxing could not help but smile bitterly. She stroked the silver-white hair of the little angel and looked at him softly. "It's like she carries my obsession. The obsession born because I can't break through the Yuansha realm. The obsession is growing because I want to break through the Yuansha realm. Maybe after I have mastered the power of will that Luo Ying gave me. This part of the obsession also affected her through the soul." Huey's mouth trembled for a while. After a while, he let out a long breath. "After all, she is half of your soul. Huh? Oh, by the way, if there's no accident, Shuang will break through the higher level first in the next 100 years. So the first 1, 2, 3, for people who break through the higher level are all your sisters." Hui grimaced and stared at him unwillingly. "Phone, help me speed up. I want it too. Damn it. Don't be coy. I will beat you up." Yin Nuoxing shuddered and had goosebumps. She rubbed her arms and stared at him unhappily. "I asked you to stay in my soul for a few years. You said you didn't want to go. Now you blame me?" Hui scratched his head and laughed dryly. "That's your family area. It's embarrassing. It's weird. That's it. So you can't blame me for not speeding you up. The external acceleration is only to this extent. It can't be any faster." "Ouch." Hui sighed sadly and glanced at him. "Then your soul is now. There's no space." Yin Nuoxing shrugged and looked at the angel girl. "She needs it. She is also hanging on for me." "Oh." Hui took a sip of tea gloomily. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He stared at him. What did you just say? She was still in your soul when she broke through the Yuansha realm? She is still hanging on for you? Damn it. There are 2 or 3 points to complain about, but I don't know where to start. You can do whatever you want." Yin Nuoxing turned and gave him a calm expression. "First, it won't affect her breaking through the Yuansha realm. Second, she can use my soul to speed her up. There's nothing wrong with it. By the way, I haven't broken through for a long time. Let me experience what it feels like again. This." Huey's face twitched. Then spit out the other one. "You're hanging on for life. Hurry up and go back to the factory for major repairs. Soon. Wait a little longer." "No. What are you waiting for? Is it worth it for you to hang on for so long?" Hui grabbed his shoulder with a pained expression. "You are really fading. You are about to collapse from the inside out. If she doesn't hang on for you, you will really lose your underwear." "Yes." Yin Nuoxing nodded, but still repeated the sentence. "Wait a little longer. Give me a little more time. So what are you waiting for?" Hui took a deep breath. He was amused. He knew that Maple was stubborn, but he didn't expect him to be this stubborn. Yin Nuoxing was silent for a while. He put down the teacup and whispered, "The source of the destructive energy is approaching the end of 95% and the threshold of the origin domain. I seem to be 100 million points away from touching it. Just 100 million points. 100 million points. Huey's hand holding the teapot stiffened. He turned and stared at him as if he had seen a ghost. Ah. Chapter 2068. Of course, he could also put it in another way. Sometimes, he was worried that once he put something down, even if it was only temporarily, he would feel that something was wrong when he brought it up again. He had a lot of similar experiences, which was why he could say that. After discussing something with Hui that night, he would wake up the next day and cancel it as if he had gone crazy. He had to put it aside for a few days or even a few years before taking action. God knows what happened to his brain after that night. So, he insisted on finishing things in one go. At present, he was in good condition. His brain could still move, and his thoughts were clear. Unfortunately, the condition of his soul was not good. It required a lot of energy to deal with the origin energy and things related to it. It was like treating oneself as a river with a constant source of water that washed away for a long time. It seemed like it would never end, but there would always be some changes in the water and the river course. Perhaps the sand would be washed away, or perhaps the stones would be washed away. Over time, the river course would be widened 1 year. Just like now, the flow of soul and energy had never stopped, but the river course had become a little strange. That was another effect of the long-term consumption of energy, a change brought about by the continuous accumulation of the soul's fatigue. But as he had just said, if some things were delayed, he might not be able to find the original direction. The deviation of his thoughts and the slippage of his thoughts only needed a moment. Of course, it could also be corrected in an instant. These things were unpredictable. God knew what would happen if he continued to sleep. It was true that his condition would improve, but it was hard to guarantee that his thoughts would not change because of this. So, it was more important to grab hold of the current thoughts and move forward than to roll into bed and rest immediately. Rest could wait until he solved the most important things, or until his thoughts reached the end. The transformation of the origin energy is different at every stage, but the small differences before 90% can be ignored. The small differences will not affect the advancement of the current path. Just treat it like a stone on the road. You can jump or kick it, but the path after 90% is a little difficult. You see, after I stepped into the 90% threshold, my speed suddenly dropped. Half an era has passed, and I know it when I haven't gone far. Yin Nuashing explained indifferently. Oh, after all, it's the last part of the journey. Huey's expression was still a little sluggish. He poured a cup of tea and washed his face. The cold wind made him shiver and sober up. He couldn't help but ask, "Let me ask you again. Do you only have about 95% of your destruction energy? Or is all of your origin energy close to this threshold?" What are you thinking about? Of course, it's just the energy of destruction. Don't you feel that the speed has dropped even more? That's indeed half an era, and you haven't even taken half a step out. That's a little ridiculous. Last time, when I heard you say that you were 90% complete, I thought that you would be able to reach perfection before you set off for the netherworld. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Unfortunately, that's impossible. Let's not talk about all of it. I would be overjoyed if the destruction energy could reach perfection. I can even say that it's for the sake of origin and order. After 90%, the path becomes very strange. I'm just fumbling forward now. The method I told you before has changed at this stage. It has become limited. We thought for a while and whispered, "We're following your guidance now. Play with the origin energy and order well. Then use them to transform the origin of structure and the origin of soul. After that, we'll start to transform the origin of energy. Then we'll go back to the first step and keep going." Which part of you has changed? Everything has changed. Yin Nuashing sighed. She hugged the wings of the little angel in her arms. Her pretty face was full of depression. I don't know how to say it. Actually, I haven't walked very clearly. I'm just moving forward subconsciously based on my intuition. I'm still fumbling. Now, I still need to deal with the origin sigil and the power of will. Huey's hand, which was holding his chin, slipped. He looked at Maple in a daze. Seeing Maple's serious expression, Huey's mouth trembled. Huh. In short, we now know that the path after 90% requires the use of the origin sigil and the power of will. The origin sigil is engraved on the soul and the origin of soul. When the soul adapts to the changes brought by the origin sigil can be engraved on the origin of structure and order. The power of will is used to activate the last layer of power of the origin energy. It's a big threshold. I've fallen here hundreds of millions of times. My head is swollen. Yin Nuashing sighed. She held the tea to her mouth and sighed. She felt that she was not in the mood to drink tea. She put the tea back. I haven't figured out the situation of these two new things yet. In short, these two new things have been added to the progress. Other than that, we still need to follow the original steps. But at this point, can you tell which step is first and which step is later? Anyway, it's not the original order anymore. Hui shook his head hard. He shrugged. I haven't figured it out either. Now, I'm just trying step by step. If I make a mistake, I'll go back to square one. After so long, I've found that there's actually no pattern. The steps are completely messed up. Of course, there may be some higher level pattern that we can't find. A complete inheritance of the origin energy is an entire world. Phew, now I finally understand what this means. This method is not as simple as tormenting an entire world. It requires one to personally shape every corner of the world, every inch of land. And it can't be done with a big stroke of the pen. This side is all mountains, this side is all water, and the other side is either flowers or grass. It can't be done. It can't be done at all. The energy consumed is making my soul tremble. In other words, he was not going to borrow the power of the natural laws, but instead rely on his own hands to create a complete and prosperous world. Ugh, just hearing this was enough to make his liver tremble. This was not something a human could do. No, not even a higher life form could do it. In any case, they created a world by adjusting the power of the void and then using the power of the natural laws to create the world. How could they complete every step and every detail by themselves from start to finish? Do they have to make balls or small people with their bare hands? Well, he finally understood why Maple's condition had taken a turn for the worse during this period of time. Half an era. It was because his energy consumption had increased exponentially. What was originally a stream in the forest had been forcibly expanded into a long river that was 10,000 zhang wide. It was impossible for him not to change it all. A complete inheritance of the origin energy is a complete world. Hui held the teacup, suddenly sweating and swallowing. Then wouldn't your 146 types be? Yin Nuashing's face trembled for a while. When she was about to say something, Hui fell into another thought. He touched his chin and muttered, "That's not right. You already have the experience of dealing with it, so you only need to use the same method to deal with it. So it's just difficult at the beginning. After this journey, it'll be what are you thinking about? How can it be so simple?" Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at him and sighed. "Do you still remember what I said before about crawling and groping at the same time? It's the process of dealing with 196 types of origin energy without anyone's guidance. Let's talk about the 146 types now. Each type of origin energy needs a different way of dealing with it. Before reaching the threshold of 90%, they can be summed up into 5 or 6 common paths. Although the speed of dealing with each type of origin energy is different, it's still okay. For complicated tasks like mine, the common way of dealing with it is more convenient. After all, the difference in speed is not too big. But after crossing the threshold, it really becomes 146 paths. Each path goes its own way and does not connect with each other. I use the method of dealing with the destruction energy to test the other types of origin energy. I found that only 12 types of origin energy can be started, and they have to be stuck not long after they start. From a moment they get stuck, they have to be adjusted immediately. And this is just the beginning of the test. We saw that his old friend was exhausted and anxious. He quickly patted him on the back carefully and said softly, don't worry. Take a deep breath. Don't be agitated. Don't be impulsive. You are now a patient. Stay calm. Recite, everything is fine, nothing is urgent. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him and sighed faintly. I'm not in a hurry. I haven't been in a hurry all the way here. I'm not going to get anxious just because I said a few words. I'm just really tired. I'm so tired that I want to lie down, but I can't lie down. Phew, if I lie down this time, a lot of things may be cleared in my mind. By then, I won't know what I was thinking and doing before I fell asleep. These things can't be explained simply by leaving a few words. Even if I leave the most important information, my thoughts will be different because of the different states before and after I wake up. What if what I'm thinking is wrong at this moment? And then I have to spend a lot of time thinking again? What if I can't remember the original state? Hui was speechless. He opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. He could only make a distressed sound. This is just the matter of the energy of destruction. There's still the origin domain. I've just touched this thing. It's not the beginning. It seems that I've just accumulated a little feeling. I don't even have an official beginning. Now that I'm lying down, I feel that this kind of illusory thing. Who knows when I can explain it clearly and when I can't? Yin Nuoxing sighed helplessly. She shook the cup on the table with a helpless and depressed face. So, give me a little more time. When I reach a point where I can stop temporarily, I'll go and rest for a while. Hui sighed and looked at him faintly. I don't think you'll really stop obediently. Once you've passed a point, there's still the next one. You just started the origin domain. Maybe you'll continue to run forward and not look back because it feels good or the state is just right. I know you too well. You've done this kind of thing many times before. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He rubbed his eyebrows and cheeks and sighed. It's different this time. This time I'm really going to lie down because... He lowered his head slightly and raised his hand. He looked at his almost completely transparent arm and almost completely transparent body. Energy particles kept appearing and disappearing in his body. They were restless, as if they wanted to jump out of his body. Because I've reached the limit of the limit. There's still some time left. If I still can't stand on this stage when the limit is right in front of me, I can only force myself to stop first. If I continue to endure until the limit is reached, I'll be in a state of moderate collapse. The loss outweighs the gain. We squinted at him and laughed dryly. It's good that you know. Since you know, I won't be long-winded. Yin Nuoxing sighed and looked up at the sky. The energy storm caused by Siyu and Qing Huang was subsiding little by little. Seeing this, Shuang Shuang also reduced her power to avoid affecting them. After about 10 minutes, the storm they caused was officially annihilated. Only two massive energy clusters remained in the center of the storm. Those were the energies released by the two of them after they broke through the realm. They were still slowly converging. Successful breakthrough. The front line of the void has two more high-level premier. We also looked at the sky. Looking at the two clusters of energy that were slowly converging, he could not help but praise. Their aura is no longer restrained. The original shackles in all aspects seem to have been broken. Is it because of the origin energy? There may not be much difference when an ordinary high-level premier breaks through the realm. Stepping into the high level is the symbol of crossing the threshold of the upper three realms. It will usher in another change and sublimation. For the inheritors, it also means that the shackles of the origin energy, the origin law, and so on will be unshackled and can be further improved. Well, although the origin law can't replace the structure law with the structure law for the time being, they can only carefully cover the structure law and the structure law with a layer. Yin Nuoxing said calmly. In short, the path is wider. Stepping into the high-level threshold, there are more things to do. Only when you reach this level can you fully understand the power of the origin energy. That's what they said. Ugh, they're going to eat books again. We immediately put on an expression that did not know whether to laugh or cry. His heart trembled when the topic of eating books was mentioned. Siyu and Qing Huang took a few minutes to converge their energy. They roughly looked at their own situation, stretched, and could not wait to land here with Shuang Shuang. Oh, it's over smoothly. You have broken through to the high level. Congratulations. Hui raised his hand to greet Siyu and Little Phoenix. Yin Nuoxing also looked at them and sighed with a smile. It's not easy. Well done. What? Shouldn't I be more excited? See, you seem to be dissatisfied with this answer. She moved closer to him, put her arms around his neck, and pouted at him. You could say a few more words. You and I have known each other for almost 6 eras. It's not like you don't know that I'm not good with words, let alone praise. Yin Nuoxing pinched the girl's nose and looked at Qing Huang, who had moved 3 chairs to sit beside him. He reached out and patted her head. In short, well done. Qing Huang stuck her tongue out at him, full of joy. TSK, not fun. Seeing that she could not squeeze a sentence out of Little Star's mouth, Siu pouted and sat on Qing Huang's shoulder. She could not help but mutter, "Anyway, it's just a high-level premiere. It's nothing to Little Star, right? How is that possible?" Yin Nuoxing looked at them with a bitter smile. High-level premiere. That's a power that I can only reach if I don't use my sea of energy. Ah, wait a minute. Based on the current situation of origin energy, I might be able to use my origin form. I should be able to save my rule, order, and energy form. Of course, if I don't save it, I'll be able to fight more freely. Hui turned his head and spat out a mouthful of water. Black lines appeared on his face. You, TSK. No wonder Sui Feng and the others said that if you reach high level, you can single-handedly overturn the entire netherworld. With your current situation, once you reach high level, no one other than the chaos concept body will be able to suppress you. But I haven't reached high level yet. Yin Nuoxing shrugged and patted Qing Huang's head. He smiled and said, "Moreover, if Qing Huang uses her rule, order, and energy form, I might not be able to defeat her, unless I use this form of energy as well." As he spoke, he became a little worried and covered his face. "Oh, I'm going to be pulled away from you guys. That's not good. I have to work harder." Hui and the others were speechless. Pull away? Didn't they just say that without using their sea of energy, they could reach high-level Premier's power by doing this and that? If they used all their trump cards and switched to pseudo-high-level Premier, wouldn't they be able to single-handedly overturn the Void frontline? We couldn't help but complain. "I think you can single-handedly overturn the Netherworld. How is that possible?" Yin Nuoxing was startled for a moment before shaking her head with a bitter smile. "Let's put aside the primordial chaos concept body for now. It is very difficult to deal with the peak primordial origin of the underworld. At the very least, the Lord of the Underworld is a peak primordial origin of rank 7 in the 9th layer of heaven. If he receives the favor of the primordial chaos concept body, he might reach rank 8. I have not thought of how to deal with this thing yet. 7 or 8 cycles of the 9 heavens of Yuan Shi. We felt a headache coming on. Siyu and Qing Huang couldn't help but fall silent. The joy of advancing to the higher levels of the Yuan Shi realm was immediately extinguished by this blow. They looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. They knew what each other was thinking. There's still time. We could talk about how to deal with them later. There's no need to discuss it now. It's still early. There's still time. Yin Nuoxing gently stroked the wings of the little angel. She suddenly looked at Shuang Shuang and said softly, "When Shuang Shuang reaches the advanced level, we can officially start working on the attack system that we talked about before." Hui was stunned for a moment and said, "I almost forgot about it if you didn't mention it." Shuang Shuang pointed at herself and asked, "Am I also part of it?" I said it directly back then." Yin Nuoxing's face twitched and she laughed dryly. "Do you have any other ideas?" "If it's me, I'll." Shuang Shuang quickly shook her head and said, No. Maybe it's been too long and I forgot. After all, Little Star said that she would put this matter aside and forget about it." "Oh, that's right. After all, the conditions were not right. You were all busy, so you didn't continue to talk about it." Yin Nuoxing slapped his forehead and said, "Just in time, Shuang Shuang's time is almost up. I'll take this opportunity to say something. I've thought of 3 more specific plans in this half an era. Blue Phoenix, your plan is a separate one because you're the one carrying the Nethervoid sword. Xiao Yu and Shuang Shuang will be in charge of energy attacks. I've specifically listed the 3 plans for you two. Listen and think about which one is more convenient and straightforward." Shuang Shuang and Siyu nodded. They rubbed their ears and took a deep breath. They stared at him attentively, indicating that they were all ears. You don't have to be so serious. Yin Nuashing laughed dryly. He cleared his throat and said, the first plan, I'll give you a bunch of special energy towers. You can use the special energy towers to deal with that period. The second plan, see you. Do you still remember your pure energy weapon? I plan to borrow part of the characteristics of the first generation creation core to give you a more advanced one. As for Shuang Shuang, you don't need anything else since you already have the Ring of Frost Descent and the Ice Lotus. I guess you don't have anything more advanced than that. I'm just arranging it for you to use during this period. The third plan, do you want to learn magic circles? With your nature and characteristics, controlling a magic circle shouldn't be a problem. You just need to spare some time to learn magic circles. To be honest, it's quite time-consuming. The only thing the three plans have in common is that during this period, the pressure on you will increase. After all, I'm forcing you into my attack rhythm. It may not be easy to adapt to my rhythm, but other than the increase in pressure, there's nothing else. Yin Nuashing finished and coughed dryly. That's it. Why don't you two discuss it? Or if you think there's a better plan, let me know. Seeing that Yu and Shuang Shuang immediately went to the side to discuss, Huey's face twitched as he looked at Maple. You're really willing to torture your own sisters, bringing them into your attack rhythm and whatnot. Do you know that anyone would be afraid of your attack rhythm? Only the heavenly god of origin and the primal chaos concept body would be able to calm down after seeing this. The latter would even be able to fight you while nagging. Yin Nuashing was about to speak when Blue Phoenix explained to Hui first. It's okay. This is our own choice. Naturally, we have to do our best. Little Star is right. If there's a chance that he can't control the situation, there has to be another suppression system to help him control the situation. We can't just rely on Little Star, can we? Well, you're right. Huey's mouth twitched. I just want to say that because everyone has their own attack style and battle rhythm, forcing yourself to change into Maple's state of extreme eruption is indeed very powerful, but at the same time, it will also put a lot of burden on yourself. You have to be prepared in all aspects. Okay. Feng Qingwang smiled and turned to Little Star. She held his hand and said, I've already been prepared to face everything with Little Star. I've already made all the preparations before I chose law, order, energy form. Yin Nuashing's face turned red. She mumbled and pinched Blue Phoenix's cheek. What are you talking about, really? Don't put dog food in my mouth. I'm not eating it. I'm not eating it. He was so anxious that he did a backflip and retreated a few meters on the ice. He pointed at them and bared his teeth, scolding them. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at him and ignored the wacky guardian. She looked at Blue Phoenix and said, We've already fulfilled the prerequisites. Blue Phoenix, do you want to learn the 3 styles of nothingness? Wow, you. Hui was shocked. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes at a certain guardian, telling him to shut up. He then continued to look at Blue Phoenix and coughed dryly. It will consume a lot of energy, so when the time comes, I might have to make some changes to the world light in your soul. You can refuse, but it's fine. This form of power is actually enough. Because you also have 2 different types of power of order, that's why I brought this up. If the conditions are met, you can release the origin of chaos. 2 different types of order energy. We came back with a puzzled look on his face. Feng Qingwang also tilted her head curiously. The power of the Dark Phoenix form and the power of the normal form. The 2 types of order energy are exactly opposite, so they're suitable. Yin Nuashing nodded. When I was exploring the origin of chaos, I also used the normal power and the element of annihilation to find it. Of course, the origin of chaos now uses the origin energy and the annihilation energy. The degree is completely different. You're using 2 types of order energy to release it. The burden and pressure you'll face will be much smaller than when I release it, but it'll still be more burdensome than when you use any other power. So, teach me. Feng Qingwang nodded. So, that's straightforward. Yin Nuashing scratched her head and looked straight into Blue Phoenix's pink eyes. After making sure that Blue Phoenix had thought about it carefully, she nodded. Let me sort it out. I'll throw it to you later. Wait a minute. Little star. We've thought about it too. Just as she finished talking to Blue Phoenix, Siyu and Shuang came back hand in hand and sat down side by side. The two girls looked at each other. Siyu spoke first. I choose the first and the second. Shuang raised her hand and made a 3 sign. 2 and 3 are not bad. Yin Nuoxing said, I'm asking you to choose one. Huey's face was twitching. He poured the tea so hard that the tea was overflowing. Oh my God, Feng, look at what you've done. The 3 girls are just like you. Look at how they've been influenced by you. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She covered her face and said, 2 is fine. Are you sure? Yes. Seeing Siyu and Shuang nodding, Yin Nuoxing was sure that they had thought about it carefully. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. She had led herself astray. All right, let me prepare for a while. When she was preparing, she suddenly raised her head and covered her face. Damn it, I didn't expect that there would be a time when I could pass on my knowledge. Although I've only passed on 2 or 3 parts of my knowledge, I've passed them on. It's a miracle. Huey's face was twitching. He forced a smile and said, You even have to pick out the parts for sale. You even have to split them into 3 parts. Do you expect to find someone in the void to pass on your knowledge? Forget it then. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Based on my family's, that girl's situation, she has waited for more than 300 years and finally caught me. She even caught a special situation, using this situation to divide. Ugh, I don't want to wait for hundreds of years. So, I'd better give up on this idea. Besides, I really didn't have this idea from the beginning. It's so troublesome to teach someone. Hui and the 3 girls couldn't help but laugh. Their lineage was passed down to only one person. There was a long gap between each generation. They didn't know how long it would take to find successor. Whether they could find one or not depended purely on luck. They should just look after their own people and stop looking. Chapter 2069. The Peak of Yuanshu. What's the situation on the last part of the journey? When Sui Feng and the others heard that there were 2 more high-level primeval, they hurried over to the ice field and the conch house manor. Before they could even stand still, Maple threw a representative and frightening topic at them that made them speechless. Well, in any case, he still gave little Brother Feng's family's 2 newly advanced primeval girls some fireworks and blessings. Then, he tossed Sis and little Shi over to let the girls talk among themselves. He and Mang Lei went to deal with little Brother Feng. Wow, I haven't seen this guy for a while. How did he become so transparent? He was so transparent that he could turn into starlight and shine on the world. When they were mentally prepared, they sat down in front of Feng and listened to him tell them the specific situation. Then, they turned into statues on the spot. The only thing left in their minds was the words 95% chance of reaching the door. Their eyes were dull, and they didn't know what to do. Well, their brains couldn't work, and they were about to suffocate. Their high blood pressure was cured. As expected, Feng's ability to create big news depended on him. The fact that he started the last part of the journey without saying anything really scared them. Brother Lei scratched his head. Feng, you've already reached this level. Why are you still asking us? Well, it's just, you spent more time with the heavenly god of origin and the others, so it's normal that you know something that I don't. Besides, based on your standards, the origin system is like a family, right? There's nothing to worry about when a family member asks something. After all, you became inheritors more than 20 years earlier than me. You're my seniors. Yin Nuoxing opened a book that she had read several times on the wings of the little angel. She turned to Sui Feng and the others. So, can you show me the way? Well, Sui Feng bent over and placed his elbows on his thighs. He rubbed his hands together and looked serious as he recalled, the gods never told our system about the path to the pinnacle. After all, it's the final checkpoint of the path. It was still too early for us back then. If they told us about it too early, we would probably just brush it off like a gust of wind. So, we only heard bits and pieces about it, and it wasn't anything useful. On the other hand, Sister Luoying and Big Brother AI did tell us about the path, but it was just a little bit. But since you're about to reach the last part of the journey, why didn't you tell us until now? Yin Nuoxing raised her head, and a drop of cold sweat slid down her face. I mean, I'm used to figuring things out on my own. Plus, you guys weren't in front of me at that time. My brain was busy dealing with these two troublesome matters, so I didn't think about it. Can this excuse fool you? Sui Feng and Brother Lei were speechless. This was purely a subconscious action and the right situation. Brother Feng, who was dealing with the mess of the origin, was in a state of mental decline. They all knew that. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and shook off the cold sweat on her face. What did Luo Ying and the others say? Try to create a world. When you have a whole world and constantly look at it, you may be able to see the imperfections in the corners. You have to know that perfection is a very one-sided view of everything in the world. So don't talk nonsense. Brother Lei rubbed his chin and said, "That's what Brother AI said, although I don't know what it means." "Oh, I like that." Yin Nuoxing nodded vigorously. Sister Luo Ying's original words were, "Just rely on your feelings. If you really can't figure it out, you could try to give it control. Maybe it will tell you what to do next." This sentence also applies to you at this moment. The earlier you get used to it, the less you have to figure out. Well, that's the gist of it. Sui Feng held his chin and muttered, "On the surface, it's like that. But according to our understanding, it's definitely not like that. There must be some kind of cognitive gap in some details. There must be some kind of deeper meaning that we don't know. Only Sister Luo Ying can understand it. If we really want to talk about it, it's actually a new path that requires a lot of effort to figure out. It's hard to see the result without putting in a lot of effort." These two sentences were quite simple. AI Hong Yun's words reminded him of a more unique way to advance in the first few realms of the rebirth state. It was to create a small world. Although the situation at the beginning was very different from the situation at the end of the Yuanshi state, there must be a lot of differences in details. But he could not pinpoint the specific differences. He would only know after he tried it. As for what Luo Ying said, it was really a very casual way to deal with it. If he could not deal with it himself, he would turn around and let the origin energy do it himself. At first glance, it sounded like a method, but how to make it do it himself was a problem. The origin energy essence that quarreled with him had not come out for a long time. Perhaps it felt that everything was fine, so it did not want to come out for a walk. In short, there was no need to delve into this topic now. It was useless to delve into it. This part of the information would not be of use in a short period of time. After a while, they would forget about it. Moreover, at that time, they did not know that they would be so far away from each other in the future. Otherwise, they would have said everything directly. No matter when it would come in handy, it would be a waste of time to talk about it. Anyway, at that time, they did not know that they would be so far away from each other in the future, and it would be difficult for them to meet again. Otherwise, they would have said everything directly. No matter when it would come in handy, it would be a waste of time to talk about it. Anyway, at that time, they did not know that they would be so far away in the future, and it would be difficult for them to meet again. Anyway, everyone's situation was different, and the way to deal with it would definitely be different. Just like how different origin energy dealt with the last obstacle. The method that AI Hong Yun and Luo Ying found might only work for their origin energy. He did not want to take the risk of changing his path halfway. If he wanted to change his path, he could experiment with other origin energy, or he could wait until he stabilized at 95% and try another method before moving on. As for why he suddenly brought this up, he looked up at Siyu and Qing Huang. He lowered his head and flipped through the book that he was not in the mood to read. He narrowed his eyes and sighed. He did not have much time left. After helping Siyu and Qing Huang with those things, he felt that his remaining time had decreased by a lot. He did not have the time to make the pure energy weapon for Siyu. So, when he saw Sui Feng and Qing Huang coming over, he remembered that he could ask them about the situation. So he immediately brought up the topic. The answer that he got confused him. After Sui Feng and old brother Lei finished speaking, they saw that little brother Feng didn't move. They looked at him and saw him casually flipping through the book in his hand with his head down. His eyes were on the ice. It was clear that he wasn't in the mood to read. He was in a mental state. They didn't know if what they said had given little brother Feng inspiration or even more trouble. Feng, Sui Feng tried to call out to him. What's wrong? Yun Nuoxing suppressed his wanton emotions and raised his head to look at them. Nothing. I just wanted to see if you have any clues. I don't know. It's hard to say. Yun Nuoxing shook his head lightly. The simple words they said may be the core of it, but it is very likely to be an answer that corresponds to their own situation. It may not be useful to deal with my own situation. Besides, those guys really thought too highly of him. They said that since he had walked so hard in the beginning, he should be able to do it later. But now he was stuck in the middle of the road again. Even though he knew that they probably couldn't provide any more help, but, he was just a little annoyed. This kind of vague feeling of not being able to ask for help. Leaving aside the origin energy, the origin domain, the conditions were already complete. It was complete a long time ago. Why was it just a little bit short? It was just a little bit short. What did it mean? It was just a little bit short. It was the kind of feeling that one could see but not touch. It made one unable to stop. It was a strange feeling. It was like threading a needle, and the end of the thread would either diverge or not go, and no matter what. It made one anxious, and their heart would beat wildly. I can't stand it. Yin Nuoxing closed the book in his hand and threw it back onto the pile of books on the ice surface. He stood up abruptly with the little angel in his arms. His movement was so loud that everyone turned to look at him carefully. After a while, they saw him sitting down in a daze. 2 minutes later, he suddenly stood up again and walked around the ice surface with the little angel in his arms, circling around the manor. Everyone was dumbfounded. They looked at each other, not knowing what he was doing. After watching him circle around the manor twice, we finally couldn't help but say, Feng, stop circling around. The starlight on you has dimmed. Yin Nuoxing said with a bad and anxious mood, as if he had been beaten up, I'm distracted. Don't worry about me. Let me circle for a while. Just a few 100 million dots. Just a few 100 million dots. Huey's face twitched as he watched Feng walk around the manor for the third time. He turned to Sui Feng and asked, What did you say just now? Wasn't he fine just now? Why does he look like he wants to break the void of order into pieces now? Well, the path to the peak of Yuanshe. Sui Feng spread his hands and said, I didn't say anything superfluous, really. Besides, Feng just said that he might not be able to do anything when he's in a daze. He just said that he might not be able to do anything. Why did he suddenly? I don't know. Seeing his sister looking at him with a puzzled look, he had to quickly explain what they had just said to Feng. Look, there's nothing strange, right? No. It's nothing strange for us, but for Feng. Huey's face kept twitching. He turned to look at Feng as he circled the manor for the fourth time. He couldn't help but say, for Feng, who has activated the mode of drilling through the south wall and the void, every piece of information that might be useful is strange. I don't know when was the last time Feng was so conflicted. Brother Lei snapped his fingers and said, The last time you forced him to get married. Thud! As soon as his voice trailed off, an observer who was circling the manor for the 5th time fell to the ground. Everyone was speechless. This guy really touched a sore spot, and it was the one that shouldn't be touched. Although what he said was the answer. The last time an observer was conflicted was when he was forced to get married by a guardian half a century ago. Blue Phoenix and Shuang hurriedly ran over and pulled up little Xing and little Angel, who were paralyzed on the ground and didn't seem to have any intention of moving. They dragged them back to their chairs. Everyone was shocked when they saw little Xing's extremely conflicted and half-dead expression. Without exception, everyone thought that the 2 short sentences had made him lose his train of thought, or that he had let his imagination run wild and made all kinds of bad mistakes. His face looked very bad, and he kept silent with his brows furrowed. They all looked at him with worried eyes. After a while, he said faintly, I'm fine. I'm just a little uneasy. Little Star thought for a while and whispered, The difference between the realm and energy of this body is too big. If there's a mistake or you can't move forward, you can. No, it's not this problem. The realm problem does exist, but it's not the main problem. And this problem has almost been solved. It won't affect you much. Yin Nuoxing sighed and shook her head. In fact, what I encountered is not a problem. It's something else, some kind of reason. What is it? It makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Maybe it's some kind of intuition. Intuition tells me that something is going to happen. Something. I'm restless and restless. I can't wait to finish this step, but I know that impatience will only lead me to the wrong path. Finish. Finish what? What is it? What is it? What is it? Yin Nuashing pulled little angel's wings and covered her face. She looked up and sighed. Everything was fine just now. It's strange. Just now? Everything was, Sui Qing immediately said. Compared to just now, what changed? Nothing. There was nothing they could do. This guy didn't even know what happened to him. How could they know what happened to him? This guy didn't act according to common sense. God knew when he would go crazy. For example, he was fine just now, but for some reason, he became abnormal after a few words. No one could tell. The atmosphere was tense for a while. Everyone spoke softly for fear of disturbing someone who was in endless self-entanglement. They really couldn't help him with the last step of the road to the peak of the premiere. They wanted him to go in and ask the honored gods for help, but there seemed to be no way for him to go in. He himself said that it was not a place where he could go as he wished, so they could only give up this whimsical idea. Feng. We tried to call Feng after a few minutes. The latter lowered his head and muttered without looking up, "Well, I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm not dead." Everyone was speechless. From what he said, it seemed that he was still alive, but he was definitely going crazy. Well, it seemed that he was gradually calming down and returning to how he was when they first met him. However, the slightly irritated atmosphere that lingered around him had not dissipated. It seemed that he was still in a state of endless worry and struggle, but he had suppressed it a little. After looking at him for a while, they felt that he seemed to have really calmed down. Then, they quietly breathed a sigh of relief and did not have to be so nervous. It was a strange feeling. The agitation, just now, was completely unreasonable. He had been quietly exploring this path for half an era. How could he feel agitated just because he asked a few more questions that seemed to expand his knowledge? It was impossible. Therefore, he must have inexplicably triggered something just now, triggered something strange. Perhaps it was some kind of condition. The condition that was conveyed to him through words was captured by his consciousness and intuition, even though he still did not know what the condition was. Ah, if only the girl was awake at this time. She should be able to help him figure out what he had just heard that made his brain cramp. He had been impotent and manic for a long time. Yin Nuashing raised her hand and looked at her body where the spark was dying out little by little. She narrowed her eyes and slowly focused. Just now, what was it that was mentioned? What AI Hongyan said? Or what Luoyin said? Well, it was hard to explain. Feelings were mysterious and abstruse. If the resonance caused by the words had to bypass his own feelings and affect other things in his body before affecting himself, then it would be even more difficult to determine what the situation was. What kind of abstruse situation would it be? Did such a strange condition really exist? Well, let's not talk about that first. Let's think about what I just heard. AI Hongyan's method was to try to create a world. This should be using various things of the origin to try to create a world, and then observe every moment and every point of the world's development. There would always be imperfections, and so on. It was just like when the first few stages of the rebirth state try to create a small world and explore the power of rules and so on. He waited quietly for a while and took a deep breath. The agitation in his heart continued to weaken, and he did not feel as impatient as before. It seemed that this was not the reason. Then, it should be the influence of Luo Yin's idea of leaving things to fate. If I can't solve it myself, then I'll hand it over to the origin energy. Well, in fact, he had some doubts about this seemingly random idea. Maybe it was because he had encountered too many problems that he did not believe that such a good thing would happen. Looking at the situation along the way, when did he not grit his teeth and persevere through it? When he closed his eyes and handed over control to the origin energy, he also wanted to be able to do it so easily. You've huffed twice in a short period of time. It seems that you're really in trouble. I see. You're dealing with these two things. An extremely abrupt voice suddenly sounded in his soul, startling him. He could not tell whether it was a male or female voice. This ghostly voice sounded in the depths of his soul. He had not heard it for a long time. Master told me that you might run into trouble at certain points. You might not be able to move forward even after exhausting a huge amount of energy due to the lack of guidance. It seems like you have indeed entered this corner. However, you were able to travel such a long distance in half an era without any guidance. That's really impressive. Lin Dong said with a smile. You're right. Yin Nuoshing was stunned. It seemed that it was indeed the case. He could not help but wonder if the experience of quarreling with his own energy was not unique to him. Perhaps Luo Yin had such an experience as well. After all, she was the one who came up with the idea. However, when did she say it? 20 years ago. No, it should be the last time in the shattered continent of origins. Originally, this matter was too early for your current condition. However, you completely fulfilled another part of your condition. Now that I've determined that you have met the requirements, please be prepared. In any case, now is not the time to be thinking about other things. If he still did not understand what was going to happen, then his brain should be sent back to the factory for major repairs. Thus, he immediately stopped his wild thoughts and pressed down on his soul and his body. In the next instant, he saw that the origin rune that he had engraved in his soul had all lit up. The destruction rune spread out at an astonishing speed in an instant. It was as if the destruction rune had turned into a rope that was connected to the other 145 runes in his soul. In the next instant, his soul was completely occupied by a red and black light. With a buzzing sound, it was as if he had returned to the time when he was being tortured by the origin energy essence. It was really a splitting headache. The sudden appearance of the massive origin energy reaction startled the people who were drinking tea and chatting. They all jumped up and knocked their chairs and tables over. When they turned around, they saw that a certain person's body was surging with multicolored light. It was as if a long river was spreading out with him as the source. The 146 types of origin energy seemed to have some sort of reaction as they rapidly moved and gathered. The origin runes on his body also lit up one by one like stars, and each rune would eventually connect with the red and black rune. At the intersection of the runes, a gradual change of color kept surging. A strange energy presence with a faint tremor of energy spread out, causing the eyes of the people present to stiffen. Little Brother Feng is unusually tense today. Sui Feng could not help but grumble after watching for a while. His eyes were a little dull. He was so restless just now that he suddenly entered some sort of state. It's so strange that I don't even know what to say. Is he going to be okay? See you nervously tugged at Shuang Shuang. Little Star is already very weak. Will he be able to take it if he suddenly enters some sort of strange state? Sui Feng tidied up the tables, chairs, teacups, and teapots that were all over the place. He sat down and thought for a while before saying, "It should be fine." Should be? He did not know what kind of state it was, but he knew that it had something to do with the origin energy. In his memory, the first generation of inheritors had all triggered similar states. It was hard to say. He did not know what would happen after the state was triggered and what kind of state it would become. If he had known earlier, he would have taken a closer look and asked more questions. What was with the hindsight? If he had known that he would be locked up as a backup plan. Shi Shao walked around Ling twice and carefully approached him. He held his hand and sensed for a while. Then, he gently stepped back without a sound and nodded to everyone. He's in good condition. Don't worry. The origin energy, origin runes, and willpower are all in a highly active state. You should be dealing with something and suddenly entered this state. This is a rare opportunity. Don't disturb him. Just wait and see. Oh, so it's like that. We could only nod. Then he turned to see you and Blue Phoenix. We'll take care of things here, don't worry. Maple just taught you those things, and you've just broken through to the high tier. Logically speaking, you should have a lot of things to do. If you're in good condition, you can go and do what you need to do. There's no need to wait for him here. His head is crooked, so it should take some time before he moves. See you and Blue Phoenix looked at each other for a while. Then, they stared at Little Star for a while. After confirming that Little Star was fine, See you muttered softly, "All right then. I'll leave Little Star to you too." Blue Phoenix and I will go and do some work." After watching the two girls slip away, we could not help but yawn. The two of them went to attend classes again. After reaching the advanced level, they still had to continue to cram in knowledge related to the advanced level. He really did not know how many things the Origin Heavenly God and the others had left behind in a hurry. Half an era had passed, and they still had not completely figured it out. The bottleneck that limited their origin energy had also been removed, which meant that they would be busy for a while. First, it would be them. After a while, there would be Shuang Shuang, and then it would be the rest of them. The time when they were busy reading books seemed to be right in front of them. Their memories were still fresh, and they did not feel that half an era had passed without them noticing. Perhaps they were too busy, and their memories were blurred, turning like a timed spinning top. Soon, they would return to the time when they were reading books. It was really tear-jerking. In other words, this ice field would be lively again after a while. After all, this group of people had broken through the seal at about the same time. Puff! Suddenly, there was a sound like air leaking. Hui, who had just sat down with a sigh of relief, immediately became nervous. He quickly turned his head and saw that the observer, who had just undergone some changes, suddenly spurted out a tongue of fire like the sun, leaving a large mass of rich origin energy in the space beside him. The colorful mass of energy kept rolling. The energy reaction and the volume of the energy kept increasing, until it was like a balloon that had expanded to the limit. It suddenly burst with a bang. The moment the energy mass burst open, a large number of indecipherable patterns and symbols made of Origin God runes burst out from it. In the next second, what was left in everyone's sight were countless complicated portraits made of different Origin God runes. They watched as they scattered in an instant and gathered in an instant, burying the observer alive and the little angel. They were a little dumbfounded. They did not understand what was going on. While they were still in a daze, they suddenly saw a reddish-black ball of light that appeared out of nowhere on top of the portrait hill. But until half a minute ago, they didn't seem to have seen the existence of this thing. Noticing everyone's stunned gazes, the reddish-black ball of light shook a little, and a genderless voice came out. Under normal circumstances, there is no need to worry. The whole process will take 10 to 20 days. Disperse. Everyone. It was the observer's energy that had become a spirit. Not only could it quarrel, but it could also bury him. Chapter 2070. In the blink of an eye, spring had passed and autumn had arrived. Day after day, year after year, the void collapsed and recovered. When it recovered, it would continue to poke holes in it. There was no end to it. Places that were supposed to explode were exploding all day long. Places that were supposed to be busy did not have a relaxing atmosphere. Everything was as usual. For them who lived in the middle of 2 points in one line, the more compact and busier the day was, the more packed the schedule was, and the faster time would pass. To their senses, time was indeed speeding up, and it was speeding up to push them forward, completely ignoring their staggering pace and not worrying that they would fall flat on their faces. After all, they were not the ones in pain, so they could do whatever they wanted. After more than half an era had passed, the Order Void had become much quieter. Those small-scale internal fights were considered as brawls between hooligans. It was very normal and did not need to be bothered. Fights in small places were inevitable. As long as the world still needed to move forward in progress, and there were still different big ideas coexisting, there would be fights. Those small places did not need to be bothered as it did not affect the big picture. They only needed to stare at the Order Void and only needed to know if the big picture was stable or not. They would monitor it and take action when necessary. After all, the feeling of having one's own backyard on fire was indeed very uncomfortable. This was something that everyone in the Void frontline agreed with. In short, it seemed to be quite stable at the moment. Since the primordial world was gone, the Tianxian world had taken over the task of holding down the Order Void. Over the years, with the arrangements of the young Sector Master, the Order Void was safe and sound. There were no major disturbances and no big or small troubles. They also helped to spread the knowledge of the underworld and the abyss of death mist, so that people who had contact with them could clearly understand what kind of death omen was hanging above the head of the Order Void. As for whether this had caused any changes in the Order Void, he was not particularly clear about this and did not specifically investigate. What? Changyuan boundary and Saint Spirit boundary? Forget it. Those two-faced things. He had removed them from their post, but did not blow them up with a blast. It was also because he had stopped Maple with all his might and advised them to take care of themselves. They had certainly been quiet over the years and had no intention of rolling around in their nests like salted fish. Of course, it was also possible that little Qingzi had accidentally slipped past the two-realm gate when he was wandering the void with 18 billion energy towers. Coincidentally, a few hundred energy towers had accidentally gone off fire, causing a commotion that made them completely quiet down. Afterward, little Qingzi had even looked apologetic and personally delivered his most sincere greetings, expressing his concern, even kindly fixing the smoking gate for them when he left. He felt that little Qingzi was sometimes quite naughty, but, well done, it was quite satisfying. Just as they had expected, the higher-ups had stepped into the higher tiers one after another. From now on, the Void Frontline could bring along a group of high-tier primeval whenever they wanted to go out. Finally, they had some prestige. If the underworld dared to come out with only 20 high-tier primeval, they would be beaten to a pulp and clean up the road of reincarnation. As for the ratio of high-tier primeval in the Void Frontline, 80% of them were warriors from the Divine Realm, while the remaining 20% were warriors of Order who were faster in the Void Frontline. Although they had fought side by side for almost 6 eras, he still liked to pick out his own people from time to time. Probably that was, what was it again? That was what it meant. It was just a comparison in the early stages. Later on, when all the higher-ups had stepped into the higher tiers and the other warriors of Order had stepped into the higher tiers, this ratio would become useless. After all, they did not have many warriors from the Divine Realm. Even if they were constantly replenished with members from the Divine Realm and their numbers kept increasing, it was still not enough compared to the behemoth that was the Void Frontline. Why was little Qingzi calculating these numbers here? Nonsense. Speaking of the higher tiers, it had been many years since he stepped into the higher tiers. He was here to declare that he was the fifth. The fifth. He was almost pushed down by Jing Yuanji. Although he was only 1 day faster, he was also 1 day earlier. In short, he was the fifth to step into the higher tiers. This was very important. The road to the higher tiers was so busy that he wanted to pinch himself unconscious. It was many times busier than before he stepped into the higher tiers. Not to mention 2 points in one line. If he could, he planned to stay in 1 point and not move. Every day, he would turn left to burn his brain and read books, and turn right to face the wall and rest. After 20 rounds, he would knock himself unconscious with a brick. But since this would force him to look like Maple, he decided to forget about it. It was very important to maintain a healthy schedule, rest on time, and release stress. After all, that guy sighed. He let out a long yawn and felt a swelling pain in his head. He rubbed his eyes and stood up from the ice field. While yawning, he walked toward the manor behind him. You can't take it anymore? Hui was stunned by the sound of the wind. He quickly opened his eyes and saw a cup of tea hovering in front of him. The tea was green, but the steam coming out of it was strange and colorful, as if it could reflect light. Hui was startled. He could not help but look up at Sui Feng, who threw the tea over. What is this? Tea, the tea of the gods. Sui Feng squinted and took a sip in front of him. Although I don't remember which god this tea is from, it's refreshing and energizing. Hui was so excited that he immediately poured the tea into his mouth. He smacked his lips and felt a lot more energized. Even his soul seemed to have emptied a little. He walked a few steps to the table, and his tiredness disappeared. Then, when he sat down, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. No, the tea of the gods isn't that. Oh, it has a history of dozens of eras, right? Hui was speechless. Don't worry, it won't expire. I have drunk a few pots, and I don't see myself spiraling into the sky. Sui Feng glanced at him and said, I found it in this pile of junk a while ago. It's quite amazing. I didn't expect to find a pile of tea leaves in the corner. There are dozens of jars, and the jars are bigger than I thought. I don't know how long it will take to finish all of them. By the way, shouldn't this manor be tidied up? It's not a good idea to leave so many things here. Many things haven't been checked yet. Hui looked at him stiffly for a while, trembling as he held the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea. This time, the tea was powerful. The cup was blood red, and after looking at it for a while, it turned black and then purple. The steam emitted seemed to be flashing with colorful lights, which made his scalp tingle. Can this thing change color? Aya, you won't die from drinking it. What's wrong? I smell something delicious. What are you guys eating? A white gold figure walked over like a gust of wind. Both of them turned around. Hui Ju stood up and poured a cup of tea for her. Do you want to have a taste? This is the fragrant tea of the origin heavenly god. 1 cup refreshes the mind, 2 cups make you never tired, and 3 cups make you immortal. You can stomp on the underworld and punch the chaos concept body with your fists. Dao Heaven looked at the Lord Guardian suspiciously before looking at Sui Feng, who was calmly sipping his tea. He mumbled as he took the tea from Sui Feng and drank it. Immortals don't have lifespan in the first place, so there's no need to express immortality. Hey, this tea tastes good. Give me another cup. After drinking a pot of tea, the girl was satisfied. She smacked her lips and savored the aftertaste for a moment. Then, she suddenly realized something. Wait a minute, the tea of the origin heavenly god is... Oh, it has expired for dozens of eras. Hui smiled sinisterly. Sui Feng rolled her eyes and waved her hand at the pale-faced Dao Heaven. It's not expired. Don't listen to him. Dao Heaven's face was pale. While he was holding his stomach and letting his imagination run wild, he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. The 3 of them immediately pricked up their ears and turned around. CU and Blue Phoenix, who had just finished their ordeal, walked over while holding their heads. The 2 of them were startled when they saw the 3 of them staring at them. CU was a little surprised. What's wrong? Did something happen? Before Sui Feng and Hui could say anything, Dao Heaven tossed out a few teacups and poured 2 cups of tea before handing them to CU and Blue Phoenix. I prepared something good for you. Something left behind by the origin heavenly god. Just 1 cup and all your troubles will fly away. The 2 of them believed him without thinking. Half a minute later, 2 more figures appeared at the table. They were holding their stomachs and thinking about life. In less than 2 minutes, Shuang Shuang yawned as she came out of the snowstorm. As soon as she sat down, she heard everyone at the table saying in unison, Shuang Shuang, are you tired? Come and have a cup of tea. Siyu stared at Shuang Shuang until she finished the pot of tea before pulling her to sit down. She whispered something into her ear, and the effect was immediate. Everyone saw that the cold air and snowflakes floating around the ice sculpture girl had disappeared, and she had now become an ice sculpture. We looked at everyone. Apart from him and Sui Feng, everyone else had expressions of contemplation on their faces. Some of them were holding their stomachs, and their faces were turning yellow and green. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Look at how much this expired food has affected everyone. I told you it wouldn't expire. Sui Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He poured himself a cup of tea that was as black as ink and scarily thick. It's fine if you don't want to drink it. This is really good stuff. Just 1 cup, and you'll be able to come back to your senses very quickly. Although that's true. Siyu's pretty face turned green as she raised her head. But it's been expired for dozens of eras. Dozens of eras. Everyone couldn't help but sigh. Looking at the glowing tea in front of them, their expressions changed as well. Siyu continued, This tea is even older than me. Who knows how many times older? Shuang Shuang couldn't help but mutter as she caressed her throat and stomach. When Sui Feng and Xiao Shi returned, everyone immediately turned to look at them. Their eyes glowed. Just as they were about to speak, Sui Feng looked at the table filled with color-changing tea and immediately understood what had happened. Xiao Shi and I have already drunk it. Everyone, they felt that it was missing something if they didn't follow the procedure. Xiao Shi naturally poured a cup of tea for herself. After taking a sip, she was startled. Wait, isn't this the pot of tea from yesterday? Sui Feng was startled. Uh, I don't know. I just took it randomly. Seeing you put it together, I don't think there's any difference. Sui Feng took the tea canister that her younger brother put aside and opened it. Looking at the tree fork-like tea leaves, she was silent for a while. Then, she raised her head and looked at everyone with an indescribable expression. This canister of tea leaves is from the Chaos era. Everyone, this must be an antique among relics, right? Xiaoshi leaned over to take a look. Then, she picked up a finger-long tree fork-like tea leaf and was silent for a while. I was going to let Ling see if it could still be used. But now this step is omitted. Everyone, this is a poison testing competition. Testing the poison with one's own body. Huey's face trembled, and he could not help but laugh dryly. This thing has expired for more than 57 years. This taste is really good. I can't taste the expired taste at all. Speaking of which, why are there piles of expired things in this place? This thing was first blasted into pieces and then put back together. This doesn't even count as tea leaves, right? This is definitely an energy creation, right? Wow. Siyu immediately lay down and threw out a big puddle of water to wash her mouth. Everyone, you're exaggerating. If you're fine after drinking for half an hour, then it must be fine. Even if there was something wrong, it's too late now. Xiaoshi shrugged and calmly drank the tea before replying. The quality of things made by the gods is guaranteed. I was a little worried, so I didn't try it at first, but it looks like you guys are fine. The reason why they turn into energy form is probably for convenience of preservation. Anyway, things that are interesting to eat now are all made with energy and the power of rules, aren't they? There's no difference. Hui smiled bitterly and shook his head. He looked at the pile of junk with a complicated look in his eyes. Anyway, Sui Feng was right. There might be more strange things in that pile of junk. They must have been created by the gods of origin. No matter how strange they are, it's not surprising. To be honest, we can get a lot of strange blessings by eating those things. However, for our physical and mental health, it's better to pack those things up as soon as possible, then find a small box to seal them up and throw them aside. Otherwise, we might accidentally trigger some strange things and cause some strange things to happen. Sui Feng nodded as he poured tea. So, are you going to pack? Well, Hui scratched his head stiffly. I'm busy reading books. I've just touched 70% of origin energy. I want to see if I can touch the domain of origin. Sui Feng nodded and turned to look at the others, who shook their heads. He could not help but smile bitterly. Now that everyone had ascended to advanced and the path to the final major stage was open, they had a lot of things to do. Who would have the time to clean up the manor that had been piled up for half an era? Even Shuang, who was the fastest among them, said that she was very busy and would not be free for a while. Where's Brute Ray? I thought he was with you, sister. No. Sui Feng shook her head. He seems to have dragged Xing Lu and Qin Jun to train. They're staying in the tower and not planning to come out. Those two guys who went through the void and the young man they brought along. Sui Feng smiled bitterly and rubbed his face. All right. Those two battle maniacs. What are they dealing with this time? Feng Ling's rule, order, energy form. Sui Qing's nonchalant reply left the others smiling bitterly. Those two who had recklessly traversed the void were impatient to seek a beating after ascending their tier. It was not as if they could not wait to spar and see how much their combat ability had improved, but why did they insist on sparring with the Observer's shadow? After all, the Observer had updated his shadow, which now carried 146 origin energies that were 90% converted, and its combat ability was untold times greater than the original shadow. Seeing everyone's helpless expression, Sui Qing thought for a moment and simply reported the result. I heard that they finally saw Feng Ling's Sin word, decapitation. Oh, Hui straightened his back at once, his face solemn. It's been half an era. Finally, someone could see the power of that strike. No one had ever made it to that point before. How did it end? Sui Qing shrugged. Xiaolei took that sword head-on. Feng Ling used a sweep to kick everyone out before the effect of Sin Whisper decapitate on the others. That's the end. Everyone was speechless. Well, they were insta-killed after seeing that strike. That was very much like the Observer. They still had a long way to go before they could take down the Observer's shadow. They still had to go home and train again. They seemed to have challenged Feng Ling's chaos form as well, Small Hour suddenly said. They were suppressed by Feng Ling's domain from start to finish. In the end, they said that they could not fight without the Fortress of Origins. Give up. Everyone was speechless. They were indeed very observant. Speaking of chaos domain, that should count as experience. If that was the case against Feng Ling's chaos domain, what more when they faced the chaos concept form's chaos domain? Dao Heaven drank another pot of tea and felt much better. It was only then that he turned to Conk Hut with his different-colored eyes. How? His big brother. I don't know. Sui Feng shook his head. Feng Ling's angelic girl has been guarding his bed all the time. I just sneaked over to take a look. I have no idea what's going on. Feng Ling's energy ball should be fine after 10 to 20 days. We turned to look at Conk Hut and scratched his head in distress. But it's been 10,000 years. Why did something go wrong? Don't tell me. That's not funny. Sui Feng's face twitched. Don't say that. Feng Ling is fine, but something happened to him because of your words. He hasn't done anything for half an era. Are you itching to talk? Well, Hui laughed dryly. He had forgotten that he was the #1 prophet. Shuang sat and thought for a while before standing up. All right, let's go take a look. All right. Everyone nodded. They stood up one after another and quietly walked into the conch house. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. Now, the Void Frontline had entered another phase of drastic change. All of them were fighting with all their might for that one common goal. But he, who had led them forward incessantly and was like the morning star of the Void Frontline, had slumbered for 10,000 years without a sound. It was impossible to say that they were not worried, but they could not see any movement and could not stop because of that. Moreover, with the little angel keeping watch, they were able to divert some of their attention. They would not have come here on a whim, but today they were truly worried to the point of anxiety, which was why they all swarmed in. Before they reached him, they saw him first. His body was no longer transparent to the point where it was about to disappear. It was very solid, as if he had condensed his body of energy. His face was calm, he was breathing, and his heart was beating. The destructive, sacred patterns on his face were still surging with energy. They wanted to say that he looked much better, but they could not understand his condition. It was not as if they had never seen him fall into a pit in the next second. He was a blind box. They could not tell what was going on until he really jumped up. The little angel who was sitting by the bed had been holding Feng Ling's hand, spreading her wings over him. She closed her eyes as if she had been waiting quietly. She only opened her eyes when she heard a sound behind her. She turned around and whispered, "Why are you here today?" As soon as she turned her head, she saw a few heads poking out from the side of the screen. A few dogs were hanging on the screen sneakily. She was startled. There's so many people." Everyone laughed dryly, moved the screen away, sat down on the sofa against the wall, and continued to make tea. Shuang came over with a cup of tea and handed it to her. Then she looked at the person on the bed. "How is little Star?" The little angel shook her head gently. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. His body is completely covered by various sacred patterns of origin, and 70% of them are the sacred patterns of destruction. You can say that it was a change that happened that day. After that, there was nothing more. His body? Everywhere. Shuang tilted her head. Mei Mao trembled. She covered her mouth and took a step back. Could it be that you? The little angel thought for a moment. She put her hands on her hips and said confidently, "Check his body. It's nothing." Everyone looked at each other for a while. For some reason, they were reminded of the goddess of destruction. She almost stripped the observer in public that day. What about Maple's ball? We looked at Maple's serene face and asked in a low voice. The essence of origin that quarreled with him. Did it come out and say anything? It didn't come out. I knew about it later than you guys, so I didn't see it. She looked distressed. She sighed and shook her head. When she woke up, Little Star had been placed in the conch house. She was also placed beside him. It was only after she asked Hui and the others that she knew what had happened during her hundreds of years of slumber. Since then, the essence of origin had not come out. Now, even if she touched Little Star's soul, she could not find out what had happened. Perhaps only he knew what was happening to him now. Even you don't know about Maple's situation. As half of his soul, you don't know. Hui dragged his voice for a long time before he sighed. Then I guess no one knows what's going on, except for himself. She stroked his cheek with the tip of her wing, from his mouth to his forehead. She saw him frown slightly. She could not help but laugh in her heart. She turned to the others and said, "Although I don't know Little Star's situation very well, I might know what he is doing now. Isn't he just busy with the big explosions and big fireworks?" Hui grinned and waved his hand. "Just look at the surging origin energy all over his body. I'm afraid his soul is immersed in the source environment and thinking about bigger things. Origin energy, origin domain. If these things don't come to fruition, how could he be at ease?" Unexpectedly, the little angel chuckled and shook her head. She turned to look at the sleeping Little Star. Little Star is resting. The hall fell silent. The group of people who were holding their teacups were completely stiff. 8 pairs of eyes widened, revealing fear and disbelief without exception. She did not know whether to laugh or cry when she saw their looks of disbelief. But they are indeed resting. Moreover, it is a real rest, returning to the factory for major repairs. It is not like before when they need to urgently recover after dealing with something due to heavy consumption. She stretched out her hand and brushed it across little Xingxing's pretty face. Gently, she said, "He's already very tired. He's already at his limit. One day, he'll quietly fall asleep when none of us know. No one will disturb him. Or perhaps he'll quietly fall asleep without even knowing. Perhaps he's just following that incident from 10,000 years ago. It's just the right situation, and he's going with the flow." Huey's eyes twitched a few times. He could not help but cover his face. "I remember now. 10,000 years ago, he said that the origin energy or the origin domain was reaching his limit whether he succeeded or not. It was time for him to sleep. So it might be as you said. He just happened to be buried by the essence of the origin energy, and he really fell asleep. I did not expect this at all, although I think it is mainly because the impression of little brother Feng holding on was too strong, so we did not think about it at all." Sui Feng couldn't help but murmur. Everyone nodded in agreement. "But it's good that he's gone to sleep. It's time for him to get some rest. After 5.5 centuries of fatigue, who knows how long it'll take for him to fully recover." Siyu tilted her head and thought. Based on a situation where a normal person sleeps 1/3 to 1/4 of the time, Little Star might need to sleep for an era. He almost spat out his tea. "That is bad. Something will happen when he wakes up. By the way, don't judge your Little Star with the standard of a normal person." Everyone quickly winked at him, indicating for him to be quiet. "Ahem." He coughed dryly and lowered his voice. "In short, he's finally a little more well-behaved. Let him sleep slowly. We'll continue with our work and strive to give him a big surprise when he wakes up." Shuang tilted her head in confusion. "Why a big surprise?" "Of course it is because..." We looked at the person on the bed and smiled bitterly. "When he rushes out after returning to the factory for major repairs, there is a 10% chance that he will bring big news. If we do not prepare a big surprise, we will be depressed for a long time because of his big news." This was a very troublesome matter. A certain observer's ability to create big news had never decreased. If they did not work harder, they would be sent flying by the tail of a certain observer after the transformation. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.